What's up? What's up? What's up? Back with I would say our favorite live stream topic of the month, the one we have to do absolutely zero brain power on. No, I'm just kidding. Sometimes you guys ask really thought-provoking questions, but it's always just a good time to hang out with the Vanguard crowd, our hardcores only pod of the month. Good to see everybody trickling in, see some familiar faces, not faces, but rather chat emojis, icons, whatnot. But how you doing today, Gavin?
Doing all right, doing all right. Really excited to be back in the saddle. And yeah, this is always our favorite time of the month, guys. It always comes around so quick. It really, shows you how fast time moves because it feels like we were just doing our monthly Q&A like a week ago. But here we are. It's October 30th. Tomorrow is Halloween, so we're super excited for that. We have an interview tomorrow, too, that we're really excited about. We can announce that at the end of today's live stream, so stick around for that. But yeah, we're super excited to answer our questions today from our community. We got patron questions, and we'll also be taking questions from the chat. If you guys don't know how it works, we take all the questions our patrons send us every month. They can send us questions of any length, and we'll respond to them with an in-depth answer. And we also answer any questions from chat that come in the form of a super chat. So if you send a super chat in, you're 100% guaranteed to have it answered. And we'll also try to answer some non-super chat questions as well, depending on how many questions we get overall. So again, thanks everyone for tuning in. Make sure to hit that like button if you just are tuning in. As I said, this is always a really fun time. Get to hang out with the Vanguard community. And I've seen some people asking about Bolsonaro. Yeah, crazy what's happening in Brazil right now. It looks like he's trying to stage another coup by blocking off certain highways and areas where the voters are, predominantly, left-leaning to prevent Lula from winning. So I'm definitely watching that situation, monitoring that situation. Hopefully he doesn't succeed in pulling off this coup, but we'll have to see. It's not looking good, guys.
Yeah, I had been following the election and the polling, tangentially, right? I'm not like the most well versed in Brazilian politics, but yeah, I'd been following it. But Gavin was actually the one that just filled me in on the most recent effort, so that I had not seen. And look, I'd have to do more like fucking homework on it before I can like artfully expound on it. But yeah, obviously if that's what's happening, that's not good. That's gonna, be a massive problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we get started, let's look at Ben Norton's tweet about that. He says, people in Brazil are warning that a coup d'etat could be in motion as fascist Bolsonaro, who only came into power in the first place through a U.S.-backed coup, tries to steal the election from Lula. And as we see here, in addition to last-minute cancellation of public transport in certain locations, reports now coming in, the Brazilian highway police are blocking voters from reaching polling stations in the northeast of Brazil, Lula's stronghold. So yeah, it's not looking good, guys. Totally crazy that can just happen. Hopefully Lula pulls it out anyway, but yeah, it's pretty scary stuff.
Yeah, Jesus. Yeah, that's always been something that was talked about in this election, that there was always that in the air, right? That, oh, well, if Lula was dominating the polls for a while. It's not, from what I've seen, it's not as dominant as like it was initially predicted, but he was leading in the polls. Obviously they had the first election already in Brazil, right? And then this is the like runoff election just between the two candidates. So it'll really depend on how it shakes down, how much of a lead Bolsonaro was able to make up by cheating, basically. But yeah, I know that Lula's stronghold is often, I believe, with the more indigenous Brazilian voters, which I would imagine is also a part of why it's easier to sequester them off from the rest of the voting block. If it's like a less urban area. But again, I need to do more homework on it, and I will in the lead up to the election over there as we keep covering it here on the Vanguard. But yeah, sorry about that, guys. I just really missed that one.
Damn, Zach doesn't even know what's going on. No, I'm just kidding, bro. But yeah, as I said, we're going to be answering all of our questions from the patron community. Our patron community sends us in questions. That's one of the benefits of being our patron. And speaking of our patron community, huge shout out to the patrons. Thank you guys so much for the support. We do like to start and end all of our live streams with a big old shout out. So thank you guys so much. Before we get started on our questions, just wanted to say thank you guys. The link's in the description as always. Hit it up if you're interested in supporting the show, if you like the work we do, if you agree with the perspective we espouse. But yeah, thank you guys so much for the support. Really means everything to us, keeps us afloat. Would not be able to do the show without you guys. So thank you so much. And as I said, one of the perks of being a patron is that you can send us in a question of any length, even if it's like a whole goddamn screed that we have to spend like 5 hours reading off, and we'll answer it in depth, because I know that the super chat questions that we also take, you're not allowed to just type in as much as you want into a super chat. Like the more you type, the more it costs to send a super chat. So it's actually a really cool benefit of being a patron, even if you're just like a couple buck patron. You can send us in like 500 words if you want. You can write a whole goddamn essay, and we're going to have to react to it and respond to it. So again, that's a cool perk of being a patron. So we'll be reacting to all of the questions we got from our patron community today, in addition to reacting to all of our super chats, and hopefully some other non-super chat questions from the live stream or from the live chat as well, if we have time. So thank you guys so much. Really appreciate your support on Patreon. As I said, link is in the description.
Yeah, Gavin just baiting you guys to go on your James Joyce bullshit and get in the chat with all of the most wild shit you can think of. I'll just be here. Yep, Gavin, go ahead, read that out. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, we like getting some more in-depth questions from you guys, and it looks like we've already got a few super chats that have trickled into the live stream. So shout out to you, Zachary. And thank you for the 199 Dream 2024 presidential ticket. Love the channel. This is always one of those hard questions. Zachary, there's this fun quote that's hope is for president and dreams are for people who are sleeping. And that's kind of how I feel about 2024, right? I don't have much hope for the president, and I don't know. So if I was going to pick my dream 2024 presidential ticket, they would definitely get assassinated before they were to get into the White House. So again, I just don't know. It's like, if I were to be like, yes, I would like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange to get a people's pardon, and then in a Nelson Mandela style fashion, actually, Assange can't be a president. So, we'd have to shuffle some things around constitutionally before I can have my druthers. But this is a dream scenario. But like, that would mean if I were to be like, yeah, let's have Edward Snowden come back and get like the Nelson Mandela treatment and be like, yeah, this guy has some shit that he wants to shore up. Now, that would also get hairy, because while I have, massive respect for Edward Snowden, would dream of having the guy on our podcast someday. But he does, we would butt heads a lot on economic policy, which would be really interesting. So I'm not sure if that would even be my dream candidate. But my dream, anyway, so that's a clumsy answer. I don't really have a dream candidate. I'm kind of soured on presidential candidates.
No, that's actually a great answer. I wasn't thinking of Snowden, but that would be awesome. Another guy I always think would make a great candidate is Cornel West. If he were to run for like the Green Party nomination or something, I feel like that would be a real exciting option, and that could actually build some momentum around a third party like the Greens. So Cornel West, I mean, he's such a great communicator. He makes like people cry when they talk to him. That clip we reacted to of him like making like Don Lemon cry. Like, he has really radical politics, but he can actually connect with the more like centrist cable news crowd in a way that a lot of radicals can't. So I think that Cornel West would be awesome. I know one time I suggested this on Twitter and I got a lot of shit, but Chris Smalls, I think, is a great, he's such a great activist. And I know people are like, you just want to take all the best activists and turn them into electoralists. Or I'm like, that's not what I'm fucking suggesting. I just really think he's a charismatic and important voice of our times. And also, he just has such fucking great drip that it's like, wouldn't that be awesome to see someone like that with a real sense of style running for president? I think so. And great politics, of course. So yeah, that would be cool. And as far as like a vice presidential part, I've said before that despite his flaws, I think it would be cool if Bernie Sanders could kind of take the mantle of VP, because a lot of people agree he's probably too old to, run for president or be president potentially. But it would be cool if he could like kind of support an up and coming young progressive or socialist, someone like Chris Smalls or something like that. And that way it would help with the name recognition factor, because that's a big part of running for president too. You need that name recognition. And if you just plucked some up and coming young activist out of obscurity, then it could definitely help to have a more recognizable name attached to that ticket. But obviously we're just talking about, pure hypothetical fantasy land right now. That's not obviously really a possibility, unfortunately. But in my dreams, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Zachary. What are your thoughts on the whole alpha manliness culture promoted by people like Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson? Fun fact, Gavin and I are actually the most alpha male men on the entire internet. There are no more alphas than us. This is facts, big facts. All of you Sigma, Ligma males, I think it's all largely stupid. Look, here's the thing. There is a real problem in our country with like young men that don't know what the fuck to do, don't know how to fucking behave, like they're really on their own. And this is like, something that the people that pull levers of power should be concerned with. And what happens when you have a group of vulnerable fucking men? People want to take advantage of them, and then they sell them a bunch of really self-serving bullshit, like, oh yeah, if you just fucking get jacked and destroy some pussy, bro, you're gonna be fucking happy as a lark, bro. Don't you worry, bro. And then it's just like, all right, bro, I'm just gonna live to fucking lift weights and destroy pussy. And it's just like, all right, if that's your fucking mission in life, I don't think that makes you a very good dude, right? You're probably going to treat women like property and objects, and not be capable of love and romance and the full gamut of human connection. So I think it's all fucking snake oil. And honestly, I hate to throw the word like toxic around because it's been co-opted by people who are like kind of lame. But that would be my take on them. Like, I don't give a fuck about you. Like and also like Jordan Peterson being an alpha male is like the craziest fucking thing ever. Have you seen that guy? Like Gavin could kick his fucking ass. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I was about to make the same point about Jordan Peterson in particular. Like, at least Andrew Tate's a fucking loser, but at least he's like an MMA fighter, right? Like, he's a kickboxer. Yeah, so like at least he can say like, I'm so fucking alpha, bro. Like, I could kick your ass. Jordan Peterson can't even get through an interview without crying, and he's also like, I don't want to make fun of the guy, but he is pretty fucking pathetic and far from what I would consider to be like an alpha male.
He's malnourished.
Yeah, he's malnourished. He looks like he needs some vegetables real bad. He's probably deficient in like a million different vitamins because all he eats is like raw meat or something stupid. So yeah, no. But on a serious note, it is unfortunate that this kind of phenomena has arisen where there's all these lonely men, the incels, the guys that can't get laid, and then these people like Andrew Tate or Jordan Peterson take advantage of them by selling them this kind of crock of bullshit. The whole like clean up your room in the morning. And don't get me wrong, like sure, some people could probably use that advice. Like, yeah, you should fucking clean up your room if it's not clean. It's not technically bad advice. But when the whole like thrust of your message, when the whole point of your philosophy is that like you just need to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and like you said, Zach, all this kind of like reinforcement of toxic masculinity, I do think that becomes an issue, and there definitely needs to be more effort from us on the left to counter that and kind of present a different narrative that also appeals to a similar crowd, because I'm not in the camp that we should just ignore those guys. Like, yeah, it is a problem, and it is unfortunate that so many people have become so isolated from society, and they feel lonely, and they feel disconnected. And we live in a pretty fucked up, scary world. You can't blame people for kind of retreating inward, especially with the rise of social media and post-COVID. Like, people don't have the same kind of community that they used to have. People don't have the same kind of guidance they used to have from like community leaders. And some people like Jordan Peterson will blame that on like the decline of religion. I think that's horseshit. I think you can find community and find leadership in other ways, in other communities that aren't necessarily religious. Not that I have anything wrong with religious people, but like that's another one of my issues with Jordan Peterson, is he always ties the decline of society to the decline of religion. And I think that's pretty bogus. So yeah, we probably should do better on the left of countering some of those talking points and providing a similar kind of space for those sort of young, lonely men and other people like that. But yeah, like I said, it's pretty unfortunate that that Tate and Peterson and guys like that are so effective at appealing to that subsect of the population.
It's a punishment from God for the crime of being.
That has to be one of my favorite clips we've ever reacted to.
Oh man. Shout out to US Dev 08. The super chat.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. And thank you also, John McKinney. We always love talking comic books with you, John. Thank you so much for the $4.99. Do you consider Punisher a superhero or a hero or an anti-hero? I'd say he's a hero. He kills criminals, not innocent people. I'm actually not super familiar with the Punisher as a character. But if you're saying he only kills criminals and not innocent people, I mean, I guess that would make him more of an anti-hero. But like I said, I'm not super familiar with the comic book itself, so I don't know exactly.
Sounds like a fucking cop to me, dude. Oh, he only kills criminals? What the fuck kind of logic is that? Gavin and I are criminals. Jesus Christ, I just committed like 4 crimes earlier today. Oh, he only shoots people like you. Yeah, that's a cogent argument for the Punisher. Get the fuck out of here. Thumbs down.
Yeah, like I said, I haven't actually read the Punisher comics. Yeah, I mean, if he's killing like child molesters or like rapists, I don't have a problem with that. I hope he's not killing.
I hope he's killing criminals like presidents. No.
Yeah, like I said, I would have to check out the new Punisher stuff. I I feel like I definitely was familiar with the Punisher. Let me look up a picture of him. The Punisher.
I definitely,
Um,
I think he has like a skull as his logo, right?
he does have the skull. Don't a bunch of like fucking the like Blue Lives Matter types kind of wear that skull actually?
What did I? Right on the money. What the hell? See, this is big cop energy. Big cop energy. Muted. You might be muted.
All right, like I said, John, not familiar with the source material. I'd have to do a bit more of a deep dive to give you a good answer on that one. And also another question. I always feel dumb. I feel like I know a decent amount about comic books until you start asking me questions, John. But you're asking what I think of John McWhorter. From what I've seen, he seems pretty decent and smart, but I only know a little bit about him. Now I have to look up that too. Jesus Christ, McWhorter.
He's not a comic book guy, from what I've Googled.
Oh.
I wonder if Clara knows who this guy is, actually, Gavin. John Hamilton McWhorter is an American linguist with a specialty in Creole languages, sociolex, and Black English. So it looks like he's a famous linguist.
Actually, I think Clara, my sister Clara is a linguist, I guess you would say. She studies different languages and dialects. She's like, working on her doctorate degree. Actually, she's super impressive, way more impressive than I am. But yeah, I actually, now that you say that, and now that I did look him up, I do think my sister is a fan of this guy. Yeah, I do think my sister is a fan of this guy because she told me that he came to Indiana University, where she goes to school, to give like a talk, and that she actually like reached out and made that happen. I'm almost sure that's who this is, because I think he did a lot of work about like Black English, like what do they call it, the African American dialect or whatever you call it.
African American vernacular English,
right? Vernacular
or
English.
Ebonics.
Yeah, he wrote like a really interesting book about that. And yeah, my sister's a big fan of his work. So yeah, thank you so much for the question, John McKinney. I'm that's not my area of specialty, but I do know who this guy is, and it would probably be interesting to chat with him.
Yeah, we should hit this guy up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll ask my sister to make sure this is who she was talking about, but I'm almost certain. So thank you so much, John.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to you, John. Shout out to you, JSOR WNJL. That's one strategy to go with.
That's funny. That does remind me, though. I was going to watch that conversation that Crystal and Kyle had on their podcast with Alexander Hunt, who used to be a sex worker. I don't think she's still a sex worker, but at one point she was a sex worker, and she ran for Congress, and she was talking about like the right to sex, so to speak, not in that like men should, have a legal right to fuck women, but that like, prostitution should be legal, sex work should be legal, and the ideas that would kind of alleviate some of the issues with the incel crowd, right? Like if you can't get laid and you've been a virgin for like 40 years or whatever, then you can go get your fix. Maybe that will alleviate some of those problems. So I need to watch that conversation because they just had her on. I know that's an issue that she advocates for, but yeah, that sounds like a great idea, man.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'll check out that argument too. I don't know. I guess I would be, I guess I should listen to it before I, delve into my initial gut reaction to that. But yeah, shout out to you, JSOR.
Yeah, thank you so much, JSOR. Really appreciate that. And before we get to the rest of these super chats, let's get into the first of our patron questions. Let me pull her up. Here we go. Do you want to read this one off, Zach?
Gas prices here in Vermont just spiked from $3.65 or so to $4.09 in the last week, leading into the midterms. That can't be a coincidence. We know it's partly the Saudis reducing the supply, but I suspect oil companies are playing politics too. It's sad that the public will vote for a party based on these gas shenanigans, but I think they really do. Yeah, look, gas prices, Americans are uniquely gas conscious, right? Gas price conscious. It really does fuck with people here. And yeah, you're 100% right. You're right on the money, Daryl. This is a combination of both the oil companies and the Saudis conspiring to get better, more friendly, better for them, not for us, friendlier candidates into the White House and the administration cabinet and all of that to again make it easier for them to make more and more money hand over fist at the expense of our planet. So yeah, it is absolutely a bummer, but yeah, not much for me to point you on. It seems like you're a sharp guy, Daryl, because you hit the nail on the head right there.
Sorry, I was messaging my sister about the John McWhorter guy. I want to know if that's who she was talking about. But yeah, that's a really interesting question, Daryl. Thank you so much. It's crazy how the Saudis are basically just like fucking with our elections now in order to get Donald Trump reelected. That's basically their end goal. And therefore they're just like, but it's kind of our fault too, because we're so dependent on their oil, right? Like they have the ability to do that and just drive up the prices right before an election in order to hurt the Democrats and help the Republicans, which is what they want, like I said. And it's also just kind of underscores the stupidity of us cutting off, like being so sanctimonious about cutting off Russian oil, and then just this proving how dependent we are on another bloodthirsty regime's oil. So here we are, great situation to be in, right? But yeah, it is unfortunate that the public will vote for a party based on these shenanigans, but also you can't really blame them because a lot of people, they have to drive for their job, and just like with any other aspect of inflation, like this is an issue that really does hit people hard where it hurts. And it's just sad that people, are so desperate because of the inflation that they're willing to just, like vote for the Republicans just because they think it might make it better in the margins. That's what really matters to people mostly at the end of the day is the economy, the price of gas, the price of groceries, and that's what's going to drive their voting, which is something the Democrats need to understand more. They always lean so hard into other issues and forget to have like a solid message around the issue of inflation and the economy, which is again, unfortunately, what really matters to a lot of people. I would say like a solid percent of the country just votes based on that. Because again, that's what affects everyone. Everyone has to deal with the rising prices of groceries. Everyone has to deal with the rising prices of gas. So that's just something that's going to affect everyone and affect everyone's voting decisions as well.
Yep. Zach De La Roca, was it cast for the mass who burn and toil or the vultures who thirst for blood and oil, in reference to how you're voting?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Daryl. Really appreciate the super chat, or thank you so much for the support on Patreon, Daryl, and we really appreciate the question. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, we can answer one more patron question before we get back to a couple of these super chats. But again, thank you so much, Daryl, for the support. And thank you, Alex. Really appreciate the question. Alex, this one is for me. Gavin, dumb question, but when did you start growing your hair out? Basically, like my entire adult life, ever since I think like probably around like ninth grade, like high school time, I was just like, fuck it. Like, I don't like having short hair. I want long hair. I always kind of did want long hair my whole life. But when I was younger, my parents would kind of make me cut it. They'd be like, you need to look more clean cut or whatever. Like, your hair is going to be in your eyes, that kind of stuff. So, around the time of like ninth grade or so, I asserted my independence and said, no, I'm going to grow my hair out as long as I want. And ever since then, it's been pretty long. But yeah, my entire adult life, I honestly cannot imagine going back to having short hair. I probably never will unless my hair falls out and I go bald, which would really suck. But I don't think that's going to happen. It's not in my family genetics, so I think I'm safe in that regard. Luckily, because like I said, yeah, I can't even imagine how I would look with short hair, and I just feel like at this point, having long hair is such a defining aspect of my a defining personality trait, I guess you would say. So I'm pretty married to it at this point. But hopefully you like it, Alex. Thank you for the question. And yeah, pretty much my whole adult life, probably since like age 15 or something like that.
Right on.
And also thank you, Zach, so much for the $2. Big fan. I enjoy hearing you guys. You guys rock. Well, thank you so much, Zach. We always appreciate seeing you in the chat. Thank you so much for the super chat. And you're saying it only lets me send $2, but no more than $5. That's interesting. I don't know what's going on with that. But either way, really appreciate the $2 super chat, Zach. Thank you so much, and glad you're enjoying the show.
Yeah. Peace. Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it. Shout out to you, Linda. Appreciate the $5 donation. Yeah, appreciate that. LOL, pig impersonation from Zach had me dying. Love the Q&A episode each month. Pig. Yeah, fuck the pigs.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Thank you so much, Big Cat's Corner. And by the way, I know you were talking about wanting to become a mod for our chat. I need to figure out how to do that. I forgot how to make someone a mod. But we'd love to have you as our mod because we do need one, especially to ban the like sex bots, the ones that come in like click this link and get laid or whatever the fuck they say. We would love to make you our mod. So someone remind me how to do that. Do you know how to do that, Zach?
I have no idea. No, but I'm sure we can figure it out after we get done today.
Yeah, I'm sure we could. But thank you so much, Big Cat's Corner. We always appreciate the super chats. Always appreciate seeing you in the chat. And let's move on to our next patron question. Pull her up. Yeehaw. Here we go. Thank you also, by the way, Alex, for the support on Patreon. And thank you, Kevin A, so much for the support on Patreon. Did you guys read the New York Times article on Casey tenants? I feel like similar to student debt, tenants unions can help radicalize more moderate and apolitical people since it literally hits close to home. Yeah, absolutely. It was super cool that Casey tenants got a write-up in the New York Times. I think we retweeted that from our Twitter account. And yeah, totally, 100%. Obviously, just like I was saying with inflation and the price of gas, people's rents going up is one issue that affects everyone regardless of their political persuasion, and it's something that it can really bring the community together too, because like for example in Kansas City, all of us notice the price of rent going up. It's like, what the hell's happening here? Like, why is the price of rent gone up so much over the last 5 or 10 years? So that can really bring the community together and fight the gentrification for one, and also just the corporate landlords that are fucking over people. And Casey Tenants is doing such great work. Not only are they doing the important work, but they're doing it correctly in the way that gets people's attention. They're not afraid to be a little bit abrasive. They're not afraid to really make a spectacle, which is super, super important given the issues here. And again, what we're up against with these corporate developers, bought off city councils, stuff like that. And the way they go about participating in this sort of activism is just what I want to see more of nationwide.
Yeah, absolutely. Gavin said most of the meat and potatoes, but yeah, Kansas City Tenants is based and there are more tenant unions that are forming around the country. Gavin and I are just from Kansas City, and we have the easiest it's easiest for us to see what Casey Tenants is up to here from our own backyard, right? Everywhere you go, you can see footprints of Casey Tenants, which is how you know they're doing great fucking work. But yeah, it was based to see them in the New York Times. I think it was actually Tiana Caldwell that was on the that was in one of the photos that was on the New York Times. She's actually been interviewed by the Vanguard, so you guys can check that out after you read the New York Times piece if you want to get a little more information on that.
Yeah, definitely check out the New York Times piece. It was super, super cool to see them get a write-up. And stay tuned for more Casey Tenants related content coming from us at the Vanguard. It's one thing that we're planning on talking more about and reporting more on, because again, it's just, we're so proud of the Casey Tenants organization here in Kansas City. They do such great work. They're seriously fighting back against one of the biggest problems that's afflicting not just Kansas City, but basically every up and coming city in this country. And again, I want to see more groups like them around the nation, because what they're doing is so on point. The way they're going about it, the way they're raising attention, and just refusing to be ignored. You know, a lot of activists are very by the books, I would say, and they're not afraid to really make some noise, if you know what I'm saying, which I appreciate about them. But thank you so much, Kevin. Glad you read that article, and I totally agree with your analysis too, that tenant unions are an important part of the activist conversation, and that they really do help radicalize more moderate and apolitical people. And again, it kind of just brings the community together, which is an important element of solidarity as well when we're up against these sort of gentrifiers. So thank you so much, Kevin. Really appreciate that. And got a couple more super chats. Thank you guys so much for the super chats today. Thank you for the $5, Ivy by E. Really appreciate that. Speaking of your hair, Gavin, it looks great today. How long does it take for it to grow past your shoulders? And when do you usually cut it? Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. How long does it take for it to grow past your shoulders? I mean, it goes pretty fast. Like the last time I got a haircut was probably 2 or 3 months ago, and I got it cut like, a couple inches shorter than what it is now, just because it was summertime and I was super hot. But it'll probably take like a few more months for it to get past my shoulders. I usually like to cut it before it gets down to like my freaking like stomach. It got really long during the pandemic, and I looked like a
Jay and Silent Bob.
Yeah, it looks literally like Jay from Jay and Silent Bob. By the way, we need to get our Jay and Silent Bob costumes ready for tomorrow, because that's what people always call us on here.
Bro,
Anyway,
we could definitely pull that off.
Oh, I know, right? I think we definitely should do it. We can post a picture on the Vanguard Twitter being like, Jay and Silent Bob fucking at it again. Anyway,
Gavin and I doing business dealings while on air. No, I'm kidding.
Smoking doobies. But yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And I am planning on letting it get a little bit longer again. For one, just because I'm super lazy and hate going to the salon and spending like $40 to have them cut it. But also just because, yeah, I like having long hair, and once it's winter time, I don't really have to worry about the heat and humidity anymore. So I'll probably let it get pretty long, but not as long as I let it get during the pandemic, because that was getting out of hand. Like usually I don't even have to brush my hair. I know a lot of people with longer hair have to brush their hair constantly. I don't, for whatever reason. My hair just doesn't usually need to be brushed much, but when it gets really long, then it does have to be brushed, and I hate that because it's always getting like fucking knotted, and I'm just like I said, I'm lazy and I don't want to deal with it. Around this length or like a little bit past my shoulders is kind of where I like it. But thank you so much. Really appreciate the super chat.
Yeah, shout out to you, Ivy. Appreciate the $5 for Gavin's hair.
Yeah, I guess you don't have much to add to that one. But thank you so much. And thank you, John McKinney, for the $9.99. Punisher, very similar to Batman. His family was murdered by a mob, then decided to fight crime. He killed corrupt politicians, rich people, and KKK people. Hey, that's pretty based, actually. His arch enemy is Jigsaw, similar to Joker. Okay, well, that's better. That's better. If he's killing politicians, rich people, and the KKK, I mean, you can't really argue with that, right? Like, that's pretty based, actually, if that's true. As long as he's not killing like petty criminals that are committing crimes of desperation, like that guy just like took some baby formula from the Target. Like, let's not go there. But if he's killing like fucking white supremacists and elites, stuff like that, then yeah. Sounds pretty based, man. That's cool. I'll have to check out those comics.
Yeah, we don't let Anna Kasparian become the Punisher, though. Then anybody that finds themselves out after dark is going to be fucked. It's like, hey, you smell bad. When was the last time you took a bath? Did you sleep outside this morning? Taking out all the dangerous criminals and riffraff. No, I'm just kidding, John. I wasn't trying to bust your balls too hard. But the description you gave, you have to give it to me. That did sound like a guy. Oh, no, he just only kills criminals. I'm like, you're around like, oh, I better watch out for this guy.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. And also, I just texted my sister, who, like I said, is a linguist, and she confirmed that yes, she does like the work of John McWhorter. I think she's a big fan of his stuff. So we'll definitely have to look more into that and maybe like read some of his books or even get him on the show at some point, because it seems like a really interesting guy. So thank you for that question too. You always have some interesting questions, John. Thank you so much for the $9.99. We really appreciate the super chat, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to you, John. And I'm a boomer and apparently didn't connect my question to Super Chat. How did you get Susan Sarandon as a donor? So this is actually one of my favorite stories, because this was like one of the first like massively exciting things that happened to me and Gavin. So people know Gavin and I are both film bros, right? Like, so Susan Sarandon is like, just makes it a little bit extra cool. Like Gavin and I went to midnight screening of like Rocky Horror when we were kids. Like, it was cool. It added a little bit of pizzazz. It wasn't just like, I like this woman because of her politics, but also it's like, holy shit, my mom knows who this is. Like, you know what I mean? And we just got randomly, she followed us on Twitter, and I woke up to a phone call from Gavin being like, holy shit, bro. Holy shit. It was Veterans Day. That's how big. I wasn't at work that day because it was Veterans Day, and this, whatever the startup I worked at, gave us Veterans Day off. And he was like, yeah. And how did we get her as a donor? She actually told us to start a Patreon, if I'm not mistaken, Gavin.
Yes, she did. I can actually pull up the OG tweet, I think. Yeah, I think she actually found us through Ryan Knight, because we did an interview with Ryan Knight, and I guess she followed him on Twitter. So here, I'll show you guys. This is so surreal. This is like one of the top 10 most surreal moments of my entire life, hands down. Because like you said, I've always been a huge fan of Susan Sarandon, not just her political advocacy, but also her acting, Rocky Horror Picture Show, Thelma and Louise, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, we did this interview with Ryan Knight back in the day. I guess she saw that and said, glad I found you guys, subscribed on YouTube, but do you guys have a Patreon? So again, when I saw that, I just shit my pants. And we did not have a Patreon at the time because we were such a small channel. So I quickly made a Patreon. I was like, oh, of course we do. Here we go. Here it is. And then linked to it below. She then responded and said, hey, all you burners, lefties, socialists, People Party supporters, etc. However you identify, check out this was still when we were the Vanguard blog. That was our handle, and support their Patreon if you can. So yeah, she was actually our OG patron, and has continued to support us to this day. I would love to chat with her on the show at some point. She doesn't really do a lot of interviews, but either way, we obviously love Susan Sarandon, really appreciate her support. And yeah, we have a Patreon thanks to her. So nothing but love and respect to the great Susan Sarandon. And thank you so much, Linda. I hope that you find that cool as well. And we really appreciate the super chat, Linda.
Yeah, it was based. I think Linda thinks it's cool. I'm kidding, but yeah, shout out to you, Linda. Really appreciate the $5. That is still like, I don't know. It was weird. We were such a small channel, guys. We were so small. Then she found us, and it was just very cool that she, and honestly, guys, that's one of the cool things about being a lefty on the internet is Gavin and I have been extremely fortunate with just how many people have just been cool and been like, hey, you guys actually aren't the worst at this. Like, here's another leg up, because it's fucking impossible to make it in this industry. Like, here's enough to keep you fucking alive right? Like Gavin and I were talking the other day, like it's fucking surreal. But like, Glenn Greenwald, like he had a big part in, helping us stay afloat. We were eating absolute dog shit, and we were like, Colin was like, "Hey, we'll pick you guys up for a little bit." It was like, So yeah, it's always wild when somebody that you've looked up to forever, decides to, help you out, and you're like, wow, this is incredible. So shout out to Susan Sarandon and all of her ilk.
Yeah, huge shout out to Susan. We'll never forget her kindness. And thank you so much, Linda. Really glad you're enjoying the show. And we love our boomer viewers, by the way. We always like to add that. Thank you so much for enjoying our show. We're glad that you enjoy our perspective. So thank you so much, Linda.
And she is still a patron.
Oh yeah, she's definitely still a patron, one of our super Vanguardians. So if you guys want to join the ranks of Susan Sarandon, the link's in the description. All I'm saying, if you want to be a part of a club that Susan Sarandon is part of, it's called the Vanguard Patreon community. It's a pretty good club to be a part of. Anyway, thank you so much, Linda. Really, really appreciate that. And thank you, M. Meal, for the $5 regarding Jayapal, the Ukraine response. Kind of reminds me of Iraq, when you would be deemed unpatriotic for even suggesting peace. 100%. It's the exact same playbook. It's the exact same playbook. If you have even a slightly different view about how that conflict should be handled, then you're a sympathizer of dictators. Why are you sympathizing with fascists? What do you just want? What do you just want Putin to have his way? What do you just want fucking Saddam Hussein to continue to terrorize the people of Iraq? How dare you? You call yourself a leftist, but you're in support of this dictator? What is this? Anything less than a full militarized response is appeasement. This is just like in World War II. What are you, Neville Chamberlain, or whatever the fuck his name was? Neville Chamberlain? You know what I'm saying? Totally the exact same playbook. And it's crazy how effective it's been, honestly. Like, it's genuinely shocking to me how much of the so-called left has just totally bought the MIC line, the doctrine of United States foreign policy when it comes to this stuff. Like, a lot of people, even on the left, will advocate that we need to be sending more weapons over, and that we should be even more involved in that conflict, which again, is 100% Putin's fault. In no way am I justifying or defending the actions of the Russian government. Fuck Putin. He's a literal fascist. But it's not our place to be intervening and escalating with them, given the fact that we're both nuclear armed superpowers and could potentially endanger the lives of literally billions more people than whose lives are already, unfortunately, endangered because of this conflict. So yeah, thank you for the super chat. I totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was massively disappointing, or I don't even know the words to call that, but yeah, it's exactly what it is. And that's the kind of, Orwellian thing we do here in this country, is we really do just topple everything on its head. It's like, oh no, the only people that are actual, like, peace brokers and, anti-war people are the people that want war to be over because of our complete destruction of our enemy. Like, that's the kind of, it's a very warped worldview. And to point out that not only was it Jayapal's response, I mean, Bernie Sanders doubled down on it with her, and it was just all across the board very, very disappointing. And I think that we are seeing that, there's even less pushback to this than there was in Iraq. Like, at least there was some semblance of an anti-war movement in the wake of the Iraq war. It seems like everybody is much more resigned in the Ukraine conflict. I imagine that's because it's not in the wake of 9/11 and something that made it like extremely like personal and visceral to the American people. But it is something also to observe how people just don't seem to care very much about this.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you so much for the super chat, Emil. Really appreciate the $5. Thank you so much, Brian. On a related topic, what can be done to revive the anti-war movement in the U.S.? The proxy war with Russia has turned even some leftists into war. Yep, that's exactly what I was just saying, man. The fact that no left members of Congress won't oppose it is sad. Yeah, that's a tricky question, man. Because if you look back in time to when there was like a serious anti-war movement in this country, like back in the era of the Vietnam War and stuff, I feel like, unfortunately, a big part of the reason why is because so many Americans were going to that war and coming back in caskets, right? Like, it's a lot easier to get invested as a people when your own citizens are seeing the results. Like, it's hard to deny the effects of war when, like, your neighbors or your sons and your fucking brothers and stuff like that are going over and coming back either with PTSD or dead. So the unfortunate reality of the situation of this war is that because of the fact that that's not the case and there's no American boots on the ground, people are kind of just able, like just your average normie citizens, people are just kind of able to, there's some crazy shit going on halfway across the world. Like they don't really understand necessarily the implications of what this conflict could lead to, and the fact that it could spiral out of control and literally lead to like World War III, which I think if actually happened, everyone would take seriously. But until it actually does happen, it's hard for to get people to like wrap their minds around it and take it seriously. And part of that is understandable because we live in such a depressing fucking world with climate change and all of these like horrible things. A lot of people just kind of try to tune it out for the sake of their own sanity. Hell, sometimes I wish I could do that, just tune it all out and be like, I'm just going to live my life, enjoy my life, do what makes me happy, and try to forget about all of this horrible depressing shit. That's the approach that a lot of normies take. And again, it's not an approach that I even blame them for. It's just the reality. But that does make it tricky in order to revive an anti-war movement, although we still need to do so. Do you have any ideas, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bummer, right? Because look, we're in this position now where like lethargy and apathy is just kind of like the norm, right? Like that's just how people are constantly in that mode. It's a survival mechanism, right? You are constantly hit with bad shit 24/7, and every time you are foolish enough to convince yourself that maybe this time you should care, you're let down. Is how the broad electorate is probably feeling about this, and they feel powerless in the wake of everything. I mean, remember when all these people came out and they tried to support Bernie Sanders only for us to get Donald Trump, and then we got fucking Joe Biden. Like, congratulations. Like, nothing that any of those people fucking asked for. And on top of that, you've just seen the Democratic Party lurch to the right on matters of war. They've completely fallen apart when it comes to passing any kind of tangible benefits to the American people since taking office. There's just been tax cuts for the rich, and they blundered the $15 minimum wage increase. There was no meaningful infrastructure bill. I guess, and after the fucking child tax credits went, like, I mean, what the hell happened? What were people left with? Nothing. So it's hard to convince people that this good shit will actually happen. And then on top of that, when you're just trying so hard to focus on the minute by minute, and things have gotten so bad and so hard for people, it just keeps you in that perpetual state of lull, like inaction, because you don't know what to do. And I think that's where a lot of people are at. What can we do to alleviate that the best that we can? I think that the anti-war movement needs to start building community again with people. I think that's how all left wing has to start. What are people craving? We talked about this with the incels. We talked about this just all the time. Our social, way we've set up our culture is not designed for people to have meaningful, in-depth community, right? I think if you start there as a left, that's how we can start to grow. Like, start building community. And this sounds so cheesy and cheap, but it's so real, guys. People want to have shared human connections. They want to have places to go. They want to know people. They want to feel like they're a part of a collective. These are all human universal qualities. And we have made it so difficult for people to feel like they're a part of that. So what can they feel like they're a part of? They can either feel like they're a part of the people who are on a bunch of crazy pills, or they can feel like they're a part of us. So I just think that, you start there, and then you say, oh yes, here, now that we have this, like, community, we're going to protest the war. It has to start small. It has to start with pods and cells. And that's the only way that I can foresee it actually being different than what we've tried in the past, and not just getting co-opted and deflated.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Brian. Obviously, public pressure of any kind works. Even though we gave those protesters, those like LaRoucheite dudes, like a lot of shit for talking about Tulsi Gabbard and stuff. It's unfortunate that they did have to kind of discredit their message by doing that, because otherwise, I think that would have been a really valuable form of protest. So more public confrontations, more demanding that politicians, represent an anti-war position if they're going to get your vote. Obviously, third parties supporting the freedom of a guy like Julian Assange, who, of course, exposed a lot of war crimes. It's hard to have anti-war movement if the people that are exposing the war crimes are punished and imprisoned. And of course, that scares off other journalists from reporting on those matters. So that's another tough thing we're up against, right? So thank you so much, Brian. Really appreciate that. Giving us a lot to think about. Thank you so much for the $9.99. And really excited to answer this question. You guys know I always love talking Godzilla. Hey guys, what are your thoughts on the MonsterVerse American Godzilla films? My favorite is definitely Godzilla versus Kong. Yeah, that was a good one, man. That was a good one. I'm a big fan of the MonsterVerse. I definitely prefer the Japanese films for a couple of reasons, and especially the Japanese films from like the 90s and 2000s. Those are my favorite eras of Godzilla, the Heisei and Millennium series, because I really just prefer the practical effects as much as I do enjoy the MonsterVerse films. I can't help but always just see the CGI. Like again, the effects are really good, but there's something about seeing like a miniature city, like actual miniatures get destroyed, and seeing real explosions and smoke and stuff like that versus like the super CGI effects where it kind of just looks like a video game more so, which is still cool. Don't get me wrong, but I always just prefer the practical effects. Something about it just feels more real and tangible. So I really admire the artistry of the Japanese films. Like I said, especially the ones from the 90s and 2000s. Those are my favorite era of Godzilla, but still, it's honestly surreal that we're getting such high budget and well done American Godzilla films. Like when I was a kid, I could only dream of seeing that kind of stuff on the big street, on the big screen. You know, seeing Godzilla fight Kong on the big screen with like a serious budget behind it. It's crazy. I never expected that to happen. So it is definitely a treat to see that now as an adult. And yeah, I always look forward to the next one. I know they're working on another one right now, a sequel to Godzilla versus Kong. So I'm super excited for that. They're also working on a Godzilla TV show, which is super exciting. So it's a really good time to be a kaiju fan. And I would say my favorite of the MonsterVerse films is still probably the 2014 Godzilla. I really appreciated how like dark in tone it was and how serious it took the subject matter. But I also loved the King of the Monsters and Godzilla versus Kong. They're both a lot of fun to watch, and I rewatched them like a million times. Can't wait for the next one. But what about you, Zach?
Yeah, you know, personally, I just think that the American Godzilla films peaked in the 90s, man. That Matthew Broderick masterpiece was just, you know, what else do you need after that? No, I'm kidding. Obviously, that was a historically loathed piece of American cinema from Gavin and I's birth year, believe it or not. But yeah, it's interesting to me because I'm going to take this question and then I'm going to give the worst fucking answer possible. I also think that out of all the ones that feature Godzilla, that the 2014 Godzilla is my favorite too. I think by a good margin. I liked watching Godzilla versus Kong though, and I like Godzilla King of the Monsters. They were both very, very fun. But actually, out of the entire MonsterVerse, I actually think that Kong Skull Island is my favorite of all of them. I thought that movie was a real winner. I've put my cards on the table, right? Like Gavin loves Godzilla. I watched King Kong. I never really watched Godzilla. Growing up, I fucking love Kong though. I even like the fucking Peter Jackson Kong, when I was a kid a lot. I know other people have opinions about that, but whatever. Yeah, perfectly good movie when you're a kid. Jack Black, right? Friendly guy. Yeah, it was really long. But anyway, but this one was like a real sharp, well-paced, well budgeted. I loved the soundtrack. I love John Goodman. Wasn't Samuel L. Jackson in it also? It was a great little romp, which is what I like about blockbuster summertime movies. I think that they're just, good crowd pleasers. You don't have to, you know. So.
I totally agree with that. Actually, I wasn't thinking about Kong just because you said Godzilla, but that movie is part of the MonsterVerse too. And you're right. Objectively, out of the films, like just as far as pure quality, I do think Kong Skull Island is the best of them. I really do think that's a great blockbuster movie. And even though it does have CGI, it actually, like, they filmed mostly on location, so it doesn't look like super green screeny. It actually looks like a real organic movie. The effects are really good in it. Yeah, I'm also a big fan of Kong Skull Island, and I wish they would get the guy who directed that. I forget his name. I wish they would get him to come back to, I think it's like Jordan Vogt Roberts. Yeah, he's a really good director, and I wish they would get him back to do another one of the films in the MonsterVerse because he did such a good job with that one. And yeah, he hasn't been back since. But what?
It looks like that guy's actually about to release a film adaptation of Metal Gear Solid with Oscar Isaac. What the fuck? I played that game when I was a kid, but that'll be really interesting usually video game movies are trash, so hopefully he does a good job with it, though. It could be really interesting, I guess.
Yeah, I did hear about that, but yeah, I'd love to see him come back and do another sequel. Adam Wingard, who directed Godzilla vs. Kong and is directing the sequel, is also a really good director, though. He made You're Next, which I know you really like too, Zach. He's a great filmmaker. He also did The Guest, which is a good movie. But yeah, big fan of the MonsterVerse. It's like I said, super surreal. As someone that grew up watching Godzilla movies, most people that like Godzilla movies as adults like them because they grew up watching them. It's kind of a nostalgia thing. It's like it's harder to get people into kaiju movies if you didn't grow up watching them. But as someone that did grow up watching them and was always a huge fan of Godzilla as a kid, yeah, it's just so surreal to see them get like the big budget, big screen treatment, like seeing my favorite characters from my childhood realized and beautiful special effects and all that kind of stuff. So thank you so much, comrade. Really appreciate it. And let me know. I guess you said your favorite is. I was going to say let me know what your favorite is, but you already said your favorite was Godzilla versus Kong, which was crazy to see on the big screen. I mean, I remember watching the OG Godzilla versus King Kong, or I guess it's King Kong versus Godzilla from like 1962. That was one of my favorite movies as a kid. Super goofy, silly movie. But yeah, a rematch was a long time coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is true. It's just fucking exciting as like at the stage that we're in right now, like in filmmaking, like this is the kind of fan service I can get behind because it's actually, it kind of like works with the history of kaiju, like and all of those kinds of things where it's like, yeah, you can see these two monsters show up and fight each other. It doesn't feel like it's like, it didn't feel too forced. It's like, yeah, in the world where Godzilla lives, like Kong, would live too. So I don't know. I just think it's fun. It's not too cheesy, but it's obviously still massively cheesy. You're watching a giant fucking nuclear powered lizard fight a ginormous ape from a fucking, forgotten island. But anyway, it's just fun, old school kind of cinema that you don't get to see too much anymore unless it's like, 10th generation comic book remake type deal.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, thank you so much, comrade. I love talking about Godzilla, so always appreciate that. And thank you, Das Bosta Fleisch. Always appreciate seeing you in the chat, man. If Kyle ever does a story about Big Seltzer, Big Red Bull, Big Burger, or Big Burrito, is Kyle been eating burritos on stream lately? Not that I've noticed, but that's pretty funny. Would you trust his judgment? What about Big E-Cig? He's been hitting that E-Cig like a motherfucker. It's funny because Kyle used to always talk about how at one point in my life, I was addicted to nicotine, and then I kicked it thanks to E-Cigs. But it seems like he's back on the nicotine train now. In every video, he's like fucking hitting his e-cig like a motherfucker, which is funny because I also used to be helplessly addicted to nicotine. Luckily, not anymore. Anyway, that is pretty funny. Das Bosta Fleisch. No, I would not trust his judgment. Clearly, he's been more than corrupted by these influences.
Yeah, it's like asking Gavin about Big Baja. It's like you can't take his fucking opinion about that shit seriously. But yeah, and I can also attest to Gavin's like full-on vape dependency. There was a long time where he would have like multiple of those like ginormous like deck of card size mods, and I had a fake ID before Gavin did, and they made nicotine one of those things where you had to be 21 to buy it like right after we turned 18. So Gavin would always like piss and moan about, oh, they got me fucking addicted to cigarettes, so I would always like fucking go and buy him like these like weird like juice bottles that he would like fucking like spray. I remember one time you went on a national flight and I got you that fucking like nicotine chewing gum, which apparently doesn't work very well. Like,
yeah, that stuff is nasty, that chewing gum. But yeah, luckily I kicked that habit because, yeah, nicotine's a hell of a drug, guys. Nicotine is a hell of a drug. And it really just makes you feel like shit, too. I still enjoy sometimes smoking a cigarette or hitting a vape, like if I'm like having some drinks or something, like in a social situation. But if you're just like, you're in a bad place if you're just like hitting your vape constantly, even when you're just like alone in your room, you're just constantly vaping. Like that's not a good place to be in. It really just makes you feel like shit. And if you're in that situation, I promise you'll feel way better if you kick the habit. It's really just no offense to anyone that vapes, obviously, but for my personal experience, it was no bueno. It also cost a lot of money, and it probably gave me like popcorn lung disease or something.
Do you hear that, Bradley? Listen to Gavin.
Yeah, Bradley, kick that habit. Come on. And also I used to be like, you guys know I have some libertarian tendencies when it comes to like social issues and stuff like that. Like, oh, live and let live. Like people should be able to do whatever they want or put whatever they want in their body. My experience with nicotine did make me think that I now do think it definitely should be 21. Like you should have to be 21 years old to buy nicotine because like your brain's not really fully developed. You can get addicted to this thing that could potentially you'd be addicted to for the rest of your life. And I don't even know why we're talking about this. Sorry, was not even part of your question at all, Das Bosta.
Who cares? So this is our show. Damn it, Gavin. We can go into any drink. No.
But yeah, because the reason I said that too is because it was like I started doing nicotine around like high school age, and then literally by the time I hit 21, I was like, you know what? I actually think I'm gonna give this up. So if I had just not been able to ever get it until then, I probably just wouldn't have ever gotten into it. So I do think it should be 21 for nicotine. Anyway, thank you so much for the question. Really appreciate the $5.99. And thank you, Brian, for the $1.99. Abolish the DEA and the drug. Damn straight, bro. Damn straight. You guys know our opinion. We think all drugs should be regulated and legalized. at least at some level. So 100%, no one should ever be criminalized for using drugs at all. Addiction is a medical issue, not a criminal issue. And yeah, 100% agree, man.
Yep. Fuck 12, Brian. 100%. What do you think about how boomers went from being anti-war and for civil rights to being cringy? LOL, this is such a funny question. Look, there are actually, let me stand up. Let me loud and proud stand up for our boomer audience here at the Vanguard. No, we have, like, hear me out. You gotta, it's like a mixed bag with the boomers, right? And Gavin and I love making boomer jokes, right? They crashed the economy. We get to run our mouths. I think it's a fair trade. But the people who are older and still rocking with this anti-warship, of which there are ample amounts of them, right? Like legitimate people who have their whole fucking lives, like they were protesting Vietnam, they protested Korea, they protested every fucking war that we've been in, right? Up to now, Iraq, fucking everything. Those are the realest motherfuckers that you can talk to about any war issue, right? Those people that have been through every lie, that have seen through every dupe, that have watched it all go down. They have seen the theatrics time and time again, and they won't fall for it. That is the most, that's why people fucked with Bernie, right? Even though he's gone on to let us down like fucking crazy, right? People want to see that consistency. People want to see your track record. And so for the people who still have a good track record, like, you got to cherish them. You got to learn from them as much as you can. And that is definitely, a big chunk of the, remaining boomer anti-war collective, like, all of those individuals. So that's for one. But as far as the other people go, man, I think it's just the same recipe as everything else that we were just talking about. The getting resigned from the closeness of the situation, retiring, getting fed nothing but Fox News. We forget that a lot of older people develop like in the way that young people develop parasocial relationships that are toxic with guys like fucking Andrew Tate or, whoever the fuck else you listen to. The Vanguard, I don't know. That's a problem, and that changes people's worldview really quickly, and it can kind of spiral them out of control. We haven't done a good job of, again, helping boomers stay in community with one another. That isolation, that round the clock pounding of bullshit information, whether they're listening to Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, it just coaches it out of you. They think they're crazy for disagreeing, and then they just get the fucking programming into their brain. So I think it's a matter of a lot more of those things than a matter of just like, oh, at a certain age you just flip the switch and you're like, I don't fucking believe that war is bad anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. It is unfortunate to see people that were from that generation, like the hippies, kind of become more just like, Fox News listening conservatives. But I will say that's not really specific to the boomer generation. Unfortunately, that just tends to be a trend with people as they get older in general. I don't know why that is, and it definitely is not the case with everyone. Like, don't get me wrong. Definitely not the case with everyone. I know a lot of older people and know a lot of boomers that are still staunchly on the left and still staunchly anti-war. But it does seem like a lot of times an observable trend is when people get older, they start to react negatively to like change and, society progressing in certain ways that were different than the way they grew up with. And again, that's in no way specific to the boomer generation. It just kind of seems to be an observable trend. So I don't think that it's anything specifically about the boomers, although I agree that because of the fact that they were the hippie generation, the flower children, etc., it is weird to see them change course. And it's weird because some of them are even like Trump supporters now. Like obviously a lot of them are, but like even a lot of like the old hippies, like I watched an interview with some Trump supporters at a Trump rally, and they were like, we back in the day, we used to follow around the Grateful Dead, which is one of my favorite bands, being a hippie myself. And they're like, now instead of following around the Grateful Dead, we follow around Trump to his rallies. It's like, what the fuck? How do you do such a 180 ideologically? That's so disappointing. That's so tragic. But anyway, thank you so much, Alex. It's a good question. And I saw that you asked it again. I don't know if you meant to ask it twice, but either way, thank you so much for both super chats.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Shout out to you, Alex. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And also thank you, Brian Frederick, for the $4.99. Ilhan Omar said it was dangerous to flood Ukraine with weapons, but she now pledges to fund them without end. Yeah, man, super disappointing, because if do you remember, Zach, back in like the early days of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, Ilhan Omar very courageously put out that statement saying like, obviously I support Ukraine, but this is a very dangerous path to go down, and we can't just funnel unlimited weapons into the arms of these various battalions and all this stuff without any oversight. And she was kind of like, let's pump the brakes on this, guys. Now it seems like she completely reversed course, and when she was confronted by some protesters about that. She put out a tweet saying like they're just regurgitating Russian propaganda or something. So super disappointing.
Yeah, I saw a couple of tweets going around, just like captioning her first tweet and then like quote tweeting the one where she was, kind of copping out essentially. And yeah, I mean, this is how fucking power works, right? Behind the scenes, something changed, right? Where Ilhan had a good talking to by somebody that could, hold some power over her. We thought nobody was holding power over her because we sent her there, with the grassroots donations, but hey, I guess not. And probably they were like, hey, you thought that our fucking re-election campaign against our primary campaign against you last time was bad. You keep voting like this, and we're gonna blame you for anything that goes wrong with Ukraine and Russia. Run targeted ads. That's how they play dirty. They play dirty fucking ball in Washington. So that's how they get these people to bend their spines over. Now, what we expected from Ilhan Omar was to go, fuck you. I am not voting for this. And I will go around and I will call you the Warhawks to my fucking constituents. And I will tell them that I was the only one that gave peace a chance. And do you trust me, the fighter who said I will de-escalate at all costs? Or do you want somebody who is going to send weapons of what they will call like defense, defense weaponry, but there's no such thing. There's only offense with a gun. You know what I'm saying? So.
Yeah, and again, this is the tweet from her originally. The consequences of flooding Ukraine with billions of dollars in American weapons, likely not limited to just military-specific equipment, but also including small arms and ammo, are unpredictable and likely disastrous, specifically when they are given to paramilitary groups without accountability. And that's accurate. Again, you can point that out while still condemning Putin and standing in solidarity with the Ukrainian people who are having their lives negatively affected by this horrible conflict. And I think she was taking a really brave stance when she said that. And I guess I don't really know what changed, because you don't hear her say that anymore. You don't hear any rhetoric like that coming from any of the squad members, which again is so freaking disappointing, because it's like no one has their fucking head screwed on straight when it comes to this issue. And again, that's completely standing in solidarity with the Ukrainian people. It's not their fault. They were illegally and offensively invaded. Putin's a monster, et cetera, et cetera. It just doesn't excuse the role we've been playing as the global arms dealer and the world police. And I think that our involvement in this conflict only legitimizes our status as such, which is not good considering how we've wielded that status in the course of like the entirety of modern American history ever since World War II.
Yeah, it's definitely a bummer to see the squad abandon any kind of even remote anti-war principles, and that was actually a based tweet from Ilhan originally, so to see her walk it back is disappointing. I shout out to you, Emil. I'm also a fellow linguist student. I highly recommend reaching out to George Lakoff and reading his books, Moral Politics, The Political Mind. Yeah, knowing my level of intellect, probably better to talk to the guy live. Maybe I'll skim through his books, but you ever read linguistics books, man? Oof. Makes Chomsky look like a fucking prosist. No, I'm kidding. But shout out to you, Emil. I'm just not very bright, and it's a slog for me to get through like academic textbooks. But yeah, I would be interested in learning more about linguistics. I remember one time I tried to read about what made Noam Chomsky a famous linguist, and then I got really confused. And then also apparently that's not like considered the like fucking current line of thinking in linguistics anymore. But Gavin, you probably know more about it than I do.
I mean, I don't know much. Like I said, my sister is the real expert. We should get her on the Vanguard, talk some linguistics. But thank you so much for the $5, Emil. That's cool. And I took a screenshot of your tweet so I can ask my sister about this guy as well, because I'm sure she knows who he is. And I'll definitely get her opinion on that, because she's, like I said, my sister knows like 7 different languages, and she's like 3 years older than me. It's fucking crazy. She's so smart. Anyway, thank you so much for the $5. And like I said, I took a super chat of that, wrote it down so I can look more into that and get it and get some more info on that. So thank you so much, Emil. Really appreciate that. And that's cool to hear that you're also a linguistics student. Let me know if you want where you're studying at. And let's get back to some patron questions. Keep the super chats coming, guys. We're about to answer the rest of those. But we did want to make sure that we get to some more patron questions as well. Thank you so much, Renee Johnston, good friend of the Vanguard, Renee Johnston. Always a pleasure to hear from you. Hey, fellas, what do you think about the fact that no one can apply for the Biden marijuana pardon? It's been over 3 weeks and nothing. I mean, it was all bullshit anyway, but are you also not surprised that there's been no real movement on them? I can't say that I'm terribly surprised, although it is pretty shocking, just like how inept that was, given how excited people, including myself, got about it in the first place. I was like, oh shit, so finally we're seeing some real movement on this front, and maybe cannabis will actually be descheduled and all that stuff. And I'm still hoping that it is. I'm still hoping that it is. And if it is, then I'll give Biden serious credit, because that really needs to happen. But as far as the marijuana pardons, yeah, there's a lot of aspects of that are really disappointing. For one, it's just federal pardons, so most people that have been arrested for cannabis possession won't be affected by this. Like, for example, myself, when I was in high school, I was arrested for cannabis possession, and I eventually got it expunged from my record, but that costs like hundreds of dollars, like straight up hundreds of dollars, to apply for an expungement of your record after the fact. So luckily, I was able to get the money together and do that. But a lot of people that are have a marijuana offense on their record, or like a cannabis possession offense, this wouldn't apply to them anyway. This really is only applying to like federal cases, which is still better than nothing. But as you said, Renee, there's been no ability for them to apply for it yet, at least. So no movement, like you said, total insanity. He needs to just come out here and straight up decriminalize cannabis, take it off Schedule 1, and pardon all nonviolent drug offenders.
Yeah, I mean, who in your fucking life do you know that's ever been fucking busted by the feds for a marijuana possession charge, right? Like, that's what's absolutely insane about this. Like, I remember I read this little screed about it, and it was like, oh yeah, any federal marijuana possession charge. I'm like, who the fuck gets busted by the feds for a marijuana possession charge? You get busted by your local police, the fucking sheriff's department, any of the, like, but that's all going to be state and county crimes, right? They didn't go after any of that. That's where the massive amount is. So why do you think no one can apply for it? Probably because nobody fucking qualifies, right? Anytime the feds bust you for something, they put a laundry list of shit together, right? A laundry list. And why do they do that? To intimidate you into pleading into whatever the fuck they want you to plea into, right? So in my mind, the only scenario where I can imagine that you get busted for possession of weed by the feds is like they're doing a raid somewhere and you just happen to be there holding a bag. Like they can't pin anything else on you, and you just happen to be holding a bag of weed. Like maybe you smoked in front of a cop before they went in and took somebody down, and it just happened that a federal officer busted you for it. I mean, the list has to be infinitely shorter than the number of people who have been fucked with for regular possession crimes by their, state or local police forces. So this is just all horseshit. It was all just supposed to buy a news cycle. Oh, Biden's actually moving somewhere on the drug war when he wasn't. He was doing the exact same horseshit. And honestly, it's a lot like the student loan cancellation, right? Yes, people could apply for the student loan cancellations, but we're still not sure that that's actually going to go the fuck down, right? It's being sued right now. A lot of people talked about when they first announced this, that they announced it and did so in such a way that would make it very, very easy for it to be shot down by the Supreme Court if it goes there, which it most likely will, because Republicans have a majority on the Supreme Court. And so just all around the board, this is par for the course for the Biden administration. Nothing to be surprised by, just, led even further down by, I guess, if you can imagine it.
Yeah, it's honestly crazy. Like the two best things that Joe Biden like almost did were just like, actually, never mind. The court struck it down, or like, what the fuck? Like, how did you not plan for that, dude? It's so baffling. But yeah, hopefully, like I said, I'm more than happy to give Biden credit. I'm not one of those people that's like I refuse to give him credit even if he does a good thing. So if he actually deschedules cannabis, takes it off Schedule 1, that will be an undeniably good thing, and we'll give him massive credit. But until then, it's like, what the fuck, bro? Come on, you can't just virtue signal and expect me to act like you did a good thing when, as Renee points out, people still can't even apply 3 weeks later. Either way, thank you so much, Renee. It's a great question. Always appreciate hearing from you. Thank you so much for the support on Patreon as well. And let's get back into a couple more super chat questions. Thank you once again, John McKinney. Really appreciate the $9.99, John. If you want a good representation of the Punisher, check out the 2004 film with Thomas Jane and episodes of the 90s Spider-Man cartoon that feature him. That's probably the best representation. Cool. Yeah, I've actually never checked out the Spider-Man cartoon, nor have I checked out that film from 2004. But I've heard that the Spider-Man cartoon is pretty good, so the animated series. So I might have to check that out. And I heard that they're going to bring back the Punisher in the upcoming Marvel movies, if I'm correct, John. So let me know if that's correct. And who do you think should play the Punisher if they do bring him back? Let me know that as well. But thanks for the recommendations, man.
Yeah, I would like to see, like, I don't know. I don't know who should play the Punisher. I think you were asking John, not me. I was like, I don't have a good answer for that. Okay, I was like, but yeah, good representation of the Punisher. Check out the 2004 film. We definitely can and shall, John. Always appreciate the wealth of comic book knowledge that you bring to the Vanguard. Gavin and I are big film guys, and we love pop culture. But if there's one weak spot that I have, and I think if Gavin has too, it's the more like esoteric comic book kind of stuff, which I feel like is usually the most interesting of all the comic book stuff. Not the tired, tawdry, like, okay, Marvel has fed this to us 10 million times, but like some more unique kind of like out there comics that are, just exploring the medium a little bit. So yeah, always really appreciate your recommendations and insights, John.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, usually like I like comic books. I'm really a big Batman fan, more so than anything. Like I love the new Batman movie, the one with Robert Pattinson. And I feel like the DC cinematic universe is actually going in a more interesting direction now than the Marvel cinematic universe, which was the opposite for a while. I don't think Zack Snyder was a great choice to head up the DCEU, but now did you hear that James Gunn is actually like the new head of the DC cinematic universe, which I think is a pretty interesting choice. Like I don't love every James Gunn movie, but he's at least like an interesting and original and fresh voice and as far as comic book cinema goes, in my opinion. So I'm excited to see what comes of that. Either way, let me know, John, if you're excited about James Gunn joining the DCEU too, if you care about that.
Let James Gunn out of its holster. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. As always, really appreciate it. And thank you, Kelly, once again for the $9.99. What a wild month. Can't imagine what'll happen next. Lots of love from San Francisco, lads. Hope you're both doing well and keep up the fantastic work. Yeah, it has every month is wild these days. There's always some crazy shit going down. But you're right. October was wild. It was a great month too, as far as at least here in Kansas City, we had great weather, so that was good. But I love October. I'm just a huge fan of the fall season in general. But thank you so much for the super chat, Kelly, and lots of love right back at you from Kansas City. Glad you're enjoying the show, and thank you for the kind words of support.
Yeah, one of these days, Gavin and I have to make it out to San Francisco when we win the lottery or something. But I imagine it's so fucking beautiful there. So shout out to you, Kelly, and yeah, appreciate the super chat. Now that Tulsi has completed her final transformation into normie Republican, do you think we will ever hear mea culpas from those on the left that supported her long after she started her descent? So this is actually the perfect opportunity for me to do the victory lap guard right here. So let's just go ahead and do Tulsi Gabbard Vanguard right here, right now. And I'm going to pull it up so you guys can watch me gloat with Gavin. So right here, we called this from jump. Okay, so Tulsi Gabbard a few weeks ago, 12 days ago. Okay, let's see. Tulsi Gabbard 2024 Vanguard. I got to find this. I thought it would come up a lot easier, but it didn't. Nah. All right, I'm going to just stop sharing my screen. I'll show it to you in a second. Gavin answered this question.
Yeah, Zach's pulling up one of our original videos predicting Tulsi's right-wing shift, and yeah, it's 100% complete. What was especially funny is even when she announced, "Oh, I'm leaving the Democratic Party," and when we said, "Oh, all right, well, her grift is complete," et cetera, people were like, "Well, she's not a Republican now, she's an independent." And then like literally the next day, she came out here and started stumping for Trump-endorsed Republican candidates. Like literally a day after all these losers were like, "She's not a Republican, she's an independent." It's like, no, she's literally Republican and a total normie Republican at that, as you point out. Jewel Droid, do I think we'll ever hear mea culpas from those on the left that supported her? I mean, not quite mea culpas. There have been a couple people, like for example, Kim Iverson, came out here and was like, this is too bad. Like, I'm not, this sucks. Why are you out here supporting pro-war candidates when you claim to be anti-war? Stuff like that. So, there have been some people that have acknowledged the fact that she's changed and that she's no longer supporting anti-war policies, at least not in practice, because she's out here supporting pro-war candidates. But I doubt we're going to see people like, fucking Jackson Hinkle or Jimmy Dore come out here and say, "I was wrong. Sorry for sheep herding you guys into the two-party system. Sorry for simping for this fucking blatant grifting Republican piece of shit." I highly doubt we're going to see that.
No, we're not going to see that at all. And I have a couple quick ones to flip through, guys. This one's from a year ago. We did this. Shout out to Nick, another Kansas City guy. Shout out to Socialist MMA. Also, Jesus Christ, fuck up my beard. I'm never letting it get this long. Like, guys, like, holy shit. Like, look at this. I mean, what in the fuck was I doing? That's embarrassing, guys. Sorry, we're gonna have to click off that one. I'll find a different Yeah, so Tulsi Gabbard defends drone strikes. Jesus Christ, more of this beard. I went full ham on the beard. I didn't even really realize what was going on, but I was just like a barbarian for a
It
while.
didn't look that bad. I mean, it looks fine. It's just funny now because you don't have it.
Yeah, it's just wild. We've been making commentary on Tulsi Gabbard for a while, and if you guys go through it, Mike Figueredo on the enigma of Tulsi Gabbard. This is over a year ago, back when we were still in our own respective apartments with Erica, the white trash socialist, talking shit on Tulsi. Guys, we've seen through this. Obviously, we had our legendary conversation with Abby Martin where we got to dogpile on Tulsi. So yeah, you're getting a victory lap from us and a call out to all those other people. Whether or not we get a mea culpa is up to them.
Absolutely. But thank you so much, Tool Droid. Really appreciate that. And yeah, it is crazy how the same people that are like, Bernie Sanders is a sheep herder because he endorsed Joe Biden or whatever. And then they'll say like, oh, but Tulsi somehow gets a pass, even though she also endorsed Joe Biden while Bernie Sanders was still in the race and now is supporting Donald Trump and his cadre of fucking goons. So yeah, it's totally crazy. But I wouldn't expect to see any mea culpas. I would not expect it. Those people don't have enough. They don't have enough integrity to do anything like that. But let's get to the next patron question before we get back to the super chats. Thanks again, Renee, for the support. And thank you, Aliel. Always appreciate hearing from you, Aliel. You always ask really in-depth and interesting questions. Gavin. Oh, this one's for me. Wow. Okay. Oh, no. I guess he brings you up too. Gavin, you think that direct threats of violence are illegal in the U.S.? Isn't that just a matter of fact? Anyway, Zach thinks that if someone was donating money to eliminate a group of people, that is an actual crime, and 100% a person saying they should go to jail. I'm afraid that is not how it works. You can say all these things and get away with it. America has two parallel justice systems for the rich and for the poor, and for different people depending on their race, and also for worthy and unworthy victims. People get canceled on social media all the time, but you can say whatever you want about certain groups of people. You can ignore them, you can silence them, you can talk about donating money to eliminate them, and you can still have hundreds of thousands of subscribers on Twitter and get away with it. Nobody will notice. There will be no outrage on social media. This is the purpose of brainwashing. It is an amazing phenomenon. People only see what they're allowed to by the mass media and so-called independent media. They are totally blind to the things that have been trained to be outraged about by the media, society, and culture. The most interesting thing is that they are totally unaware of their biases and blindness. A lot to unpack there. Well, thank you so much for the question. And I guess it's not really a question. It's more of just like a long statement. I don't really know what I don't really know if you're asking us anything in particular. But for the most part, it is true that direct threats of violence are illegal. Like if I went on Twitter and started directly threatening people, that would be at least, worthy. I would probably get banned for doing that. And someone could probably press charges against me if I was literally saying like, I'm going to come kill you and burn your house down or like something like, you know what I'm saying? Like that is literally a crime.
It's called criminal threat.
Yeah. Criminal threat. So, there are definitely some gray areas. It depends on how you word something. You could potentially pass it off as a joke or as satire, obviously if I went on Twitter and said like I'm going to kill Elon Musk or something, like I doubt I'd be arrested for that. I'm not saying that like the cops are going to show up at my door and arrest me for saying that. But I'd probably get banned on Twitter. Even now, I saw someone who literally did that. They like responded to an Elon Musk tweet after he took over Twitter and was like, I'm going to kill you. And he got banned. They're like, so much for free speech. So, I mean, most social media platforms will still censor you for making direct threats of violence. And that's okay, in my opinion. Like, that's not protected speech. You shouldn't be able to threaten people. You shouldn't be able to say, like, let's round up all the Jews and put them in gas chambers. Like, that's not protected speech necessarily. So I'm okay with that being censored. So again, I'm not really sure what your question is. I mostly agree with what you're saying. I totally agree that America has, a justice system for the rich and a different justice system for the poor, and that it's doled out differently depending on people's race and social status. You're not going to hear any argument for me on that. Do you have any specific response to this one, Zach?
Yeah, I would like to have heard some specific examples of like who you're thinking of. Like, I do understand that, like, I could, feasibly like go and make a massive contribution to like the fucking, I don't know, like the United States gives a massive contribution to the Israeli government, and they in turn, with the IDF, like do fucking crimes to eliminate the Palestinian population in Israel, and I could go on TV and talk about how I massively champion and support that money being sent to Israel, and that would eliminate in death. So I see what you're saying, to where there like are examples. Or if I was like, like when Ted Cruz goes on and says that we should like carpet bomb the X, Y, and Z. Yeah, that's a threat of violence that we do not prosecute in the United States, and that is wrong. And we do have like a weird fucked up exception for like anybody who is our militaristic enemy. What Gavin and I were mostly referring to was interdomestic conflict. And while it's true that we do have a two-tier justice system, if you go to a court system, it doesn't matter, if you're poor. The one caveat would be if you yourself are like wanted for something, like if you have a warrant out, that could prohibit you from utilizing the court system. That's definitely a problem. So I hear what you're saying, Aliel, and I see that there are definitely nuances here, but by and large, somebody of my similar socioeconomic situation that happens to be like a black dude, if somebody commits like a criminal act against them, like threatening their lives, I'm not saying the cops are going to do much to prevent that or solve it, but it is technically illegal. Like, I'm not saying the cops are going to keep you safe if you report that to them, but you can report that to them and they will have to be like, well, this person has now been accused of a crime. And, again, yes, it's rich people have more resources to, work through the court systems and all of that, but it doesn't necessarily change like whether or not something is a crime, right? It's just your ability to prosecute that and receive any damages for that crime that was committed. So I definitely appreciate the points you're making, Aliel. I don't think we have too much disagreement here, just a matter of, what we were focusing on when we were articulating those points.
Yeah, that sounds right. That was a good response, Zach. And like I said, Aliel, I agree with a lot of what you're saying here. There's no doubt about it that there is a two-tier justice system. Definitely not going to find any argument from us there. And you're right. Zach made a great point that, yeah, you can go on TV and say, bomb, bomb, bomb Iran, like John McCain did, and you'll be worshipped as a hero. But if you say that about a different group of people and you're a different person, then absolutely you could be canceled, quote unquote, for saying that. So there's a lot of contradictions, a lot of stuff that's kind of fucked up about that. But yeah, thank you so much, Aliel. Really appreciate it. And also we have to keep in mind that these social media companies, like we can care. I care about free speech. I would at some points even call myself a free speech maximalist, but at the end of the day, the problem is capitalism. And the reason why social media companies censor people is because they want the advertiser money, right? Like they don't give a fuck about free speech. What they want is for advertisers to not flee their platform. So if they have people on their platforms that are engaging in hate speech or any kind of speech that is deemed like, unfriendly to advertisers, they're going to get rid of it because what they care about ultimately is their advertisers and they want them to stay. So, that's really what's preventing these companies from being just total bastions of free speech, which, maybe isn't even the best idea anyway, given what we've seen happen in the wake of Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter with like the N-word trending on Twitter. And it's like, all right, bro, maybe some moderation is required. But thank you so much, Aliel. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, shout out to you, Aliel. And do we want to do another Patreon question before we go back to the super chats? Rezkin, Zach, I like how, I'm just going to point it out. I'm going to put y'all on blast. I like how people go out of their way to spell my name wrong on every single fucking, it's like, it's on my name tag. I'm just saying. Zach, as the resident mixologist, curious if you have watched the new show on Netflix, Drink Masters. Gavin, first episode is on margaritas, so you might enjoy it as well. On a more serious note, do you think that attacks on politicians and SC justices will continue to increase as seems society is getting more polarized and people become more desperate? I do not condone violence, but worry that is the case. In the 60s, we had both Malcolm and Martin. Do you think that as bad as it is and against violence, does it take both the civil protest and the fear of violence erupting for politicians to start making real change? Okay, lot to unpack there. So first, haven't seen the show, but I definitely think Gavin and I would enjoy watching the Margaritas episode. As far as politics goes, look, America has a massive problem with violence. We are obsessed with violence. We worship violence. Violence is, as Chris Hedges put it, and I don't know if he was quoting somebody else, but he probably was, but talking about how violence is viewed as a form of purification in America, right? Violence is a form of purification. So, and what does that beget us? Lots of political violence, lots of animosity towards everyone else, school shootings, mass shootings all the time, right? And it's a combination of a lot of things. It's our culture. It's our lack of equality when it comes to socioeconomic status, all kinds of things. And so of course, as you have a more and more unstable life for Americans, you're going to see more acts of depravity, essentially these acts of extreme violence, as these people who through multiple different reasons have developed a serious deep mental health issue, and decided that they're going to purify whatever wrong they see in this country, rectify it through violence. So of course that's going to happen. I myself have always been of the position, like, I'm not a pacifist, right? Like, if you slap me in the face, like, I'm gonna kick your teeth down your throat. But I don't believe in killing people, right? Like, I like, there's a line in the sand, right? Like, I don't believe in doing damage to somebody that they can't recover overnight in a hospital from, right? Okay, so I don't believe in violence like that. I think that if you take ethics completely off the table, I just think it fucking discredits the movement, right? Gavin and I, when we went through our entire Wages of Rebellion book club, we talked a lot about this, how if you're going to gain public credibility, you cannot resort to violence. That's what Martin Luther King understood. But, you also obviously have to consider the, Malcolm, any means necessary approach. It's not one. So for me, it's not a matter of ethics, it's just a matter of the best strategy. But I don't know. I'm kind of talking in circles here. It's a big question. What do you think, Gavin?
I mean, I definitely think there are some instances where violence is acceptable. Like if you look at like some of the slave rebellions, like I don't think it was a negative thing for them to like kill their masters or whatever. Like you're not going to hear me saying like, oh, that was uncivil. Like it would have been a lot
more.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so there are definitely some situations where it's permissible, but for the most part, like in like 99% of circumstances, yeah, it's definitely not. And I don't think that it's a very good tactic either, unless you're literally being like held captive and like bonded as a human being. But do I think it's a good idea to just go like start murdering politicians on the street to protest their corrupt policy? No, ultimately no. That's only going to increase sympathy for them, and like we saw with Nancy Pelosi's husband or whatever. Like fuck Nancy Pelosi and her husband. But now all the assassination attempt on Pelosi's husband, that just generated a bunch of sympathy for the Pelosi's and made critics of her look deranged. So I don't think that really in any way helped the cause of protesting politicians. So but that being said, I also don't think that it's like anything new to do that. Like people have been attempting to assassinate or assassinating politicians since the beginning of time, and they go back to like fucking Abraham Lincoln. I mean, in the 80s, someone tried to assassinate Ronald Reagan.
The beginning of time in the 1800s.
You know what I'm saying, though? Like, ever since we've had politicians is what I mean. Like, at least in America. So, and even in Japan, like Shinzo Abe was just assassinated. It's not even uniquely American. Like, crazy people are always going to do crazy things. And that sometimes takes the form of trying to assassinate or successfully assassinating powerful people. It's not the answer. It's not going to help the cause you're promoting, but it's just a reality of life. So, some people were trying to say like, oh, the assassination attempt on Pelosi is like a sign of rising fascism in the United States. Like, yeah, there's definitely rising fascism. I'm not denying that, but also like political assassination attempts are nothing new. I don't necessarily think you can be like, this is all of a sudden different than all of these other assassination attempts or successful assassinations that have happened in the past. So that's an interesting question, but
yeah, like the pharaohs were all murking each other. That's what I thought you were going to go with, which is why I chuckled when you said Abraham Lincoln. I'm thinking he's like going back to like the fucking Egyptian.
I was thinking about American history, but as far as the Netflix show Drink Masters, I would definitely be interested in checking that out. You guys know I am a sucker for a classic margarita. That is my favorite cocktail. I don't drink a ton, but if I am going to have a cocktail, it's probably going to be a margarita. I really do enjoy them. Something about that salty, sweet sourness is just so delicious. And tequila is my favorite spirit. So yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out. I'm sure that's very visually appealing to watching them make different kinds of margaritas and stuff. So that's pretty cool, Reskin. Thank you so much for the recommendation. And do I think that attacks on politicians and Supreme Court justices will continue to increase? Like I said, I don't really think that. I think that people have always been like political assassinations or assassination attempts are really nothing new. So I kind of doubt it. I tend to doubt it, especially with heightened security these days. Like people know that they don't really have much of a chance of pulling something like that off. So I kind of doubt it, but who knows, right? answer another super chat. Thank you so much, Josh Daniel, for the 199. 90s Godzilla had one of Rage Against the Machine's best songs, No Shelter. Yeah, you're damn straight, man. That is 100% true, and probably the only good thing about the 1998 Godzilla movie, honestly. That movie is irredeemable garbage, in my opinion. It's not only a terrible movie, but it's a terrible Godzilla movie. Like, Godzilla does not even look like Godzilla. He doesn't breathe fire. At least he kind of breathes fire, but it's not like the atomic breath that's iconic to the character. It's like this weird other form of fire breathing that's super lame. The military kills Godzilla at the end of that movie with like some missiles, which is just so like antithetical to the entire concept of Godzilla, who's supposed to be a fucking god that cannot be killed at least by human artillery. So stupid. I hate that movie. I hate what they did to the character. But that is a great song, and yeah, probably the only good thing to come out of that film.
Cinema, simulated life, ill drama, forthright culture, Americana. Fit right into what we were talking about.
Yeah, thank you so much, Josh Daniel. And I know some people do like the 90s Godzilla movie. I guess it's fine if you just look at it as a monster movie. If it was just not called Godzilla, I wouldn't be as offended by it, but it's just not a Godzilla movie.
It looks more like a Jurassic Park dinosaur than Godzilla to me.
It was actually very inspired by Jurassic Park, which is why towards the end of the movie, they have like the little baby Godzillas running around, and they basically just look like the Velociraptors from Jurassic Park, which came out like 5 years before that movie did. So it was clearly trying to cash in on the Jurassic Park hype and just kind of use the Godzilla name. Apparently, Roland Emmerich, who directed that movie, was like not a fan of Godzilla at all. Like, he didn't even really like Godzilla movies and thought they were trash. So they literally yeah, exactly. It's like, why the fuck did they hire someone that hated Godzilla and had nothing but disdain for the classic Japanese films to direct the American adaptation? It was such trash. And honestly, it does make me appreciate the more recent American ones more, because at least they get the character of Godzilla correct, despite their, some of their other flaws. But yeah, that movie's trash. That's a good song though. So thank you so much, Josh.
Also, shout out to Diet Tuna Soda. Shin Gojira is a great Godzilla movie.
Yeah, Shin Gojira is great. It's one of the more like serious and grounded Godzilla movies, which, to be honest, I do kind of prefer the ones where monsters fight each other. So, it's not one that I rewatch a ton, but it's definitely like, when it comes to being a more substantive film, a more like philosophical take on the character, it's definitely really good. Plus, I like the design of Godzilla in that one a lot. He actually really looks like
That's what I was.
He really looks like a product of like radiation and really good design on that one.
Yeah, that one I feel like, at least for me, is one of the best examples of like a full ass, just like a complete film that just is a Godzilla. You know what I mean? But anyway, yeah, I also get the appeal of like, destroyer of worlds and all that kind of shit, where it's just like, all right, the pardon doesn't apply to distribution of marijuana either. This is what I'm saying, dude. The feds can bust you for distribution. So that's when my brain was like, okay, this would actually be based because one of the things that was really popular when I was a kid was the mail distribution networks, right? So everybody would just put bud and everything through the mail, and you would just kind of communicate with people through the deep web, right? And a lot of those people did get busted by the feds. But those are all distribution charges. Even if you just ordered it, they railed everybody that they came down with the feds on that. And that was actually a big thing that went down in like all 50 states at one point, where they were really, really cracking down on illegal distribution and trafficking of cannabis through and other drugs through fucking the mail. And so that was another thing that the feds all gave people fucking crimes for. But again, none of that's getting expunged, because that's not just a possession charge. Even if you just ordered it through the deep web, they fucking wrap you up with a bunch of other like conspiracy charges and all kinds of, I read they tried to get some people with like RICO shit. It's massive, like what they did. And so this is just a bullshit fucking cop out to try and get some media press acting like they're doing something well. The people whose lives were ruined by these policies are still fucking ruined.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's super well said, Zach. Yeah, it was honestly such a half measure in typical neoliberal fashion. It's like, here, we're going to pretend to do something cool, but actually we're not actually going to do shit, even though we could probably really benefit from that, given that the midterms are about to come up and cannabis is a bipartisanly popular issue. Yeah, do you not want to win? Apparently not. Just don't do anything popular and just pretend like you're going to, and then 2 weeks later be like, actually, never mind. Like, fucking ridiculous. But thank you so much, Brian. Really appreciate that. Again, we really need all nonviolent drug offenders freed from prison or having all their records expunged instantly. And cannabis should be descheduled along with other drugs, but we can start with cannabis. So thank you so much, Brian. Really appreciate that. Thank you, John McKinney, for the $4.99. I know this will never happen, but I'd like to see Christian Bale play the Punisher after watching Equilibrium. He looks just like him. Yeah, Equilibrium is an underrated movie. And yeah, I think that would probably be a good choice. Like I said, not super familiar with Punisher, but Christian Bale's obviously a great actor. Christian Bale is one of the best actors currently alive, if you ask me. That guy is so good. Speaking of Christian Bale, though, you know what I was rewatching the other day that I don't think holds up particularly well? Batman Begins. I don't know if what you think about that movie, Zach, but I was rewatching it the other day and I was like, this movie sucks.
So here's the thing about the Batman trilogy by Nolan, right? It was such a cultural phenomenon for a while that we all forgot that out of the three, there's only one good movie. And it was just like the hype carried it. It was like, wow, and then it was like Batman Begins was like mellow hype, right? Everybody saw it and it was like, okay, whatever. It was just a movie. But when Dark Knight came out and there was all the Joker shit and then Heath Ledger died, and it was a force in culture. That and Inception were like the two ginormous movies at the time, right? And Chris Nolan just got lifted up to like a fucking god level. And I 100% agree with you though. It's not Christian Bale's fault that movie sucks. There was just like so much convoluted shit. The Liam Neeson stuff I hated. I don't like. It doesn't feel like Batman to me enough to be a Batman movie. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. But I also agree, Christian Bale, phenomenal actor. I've never seen Equilibrium, but I rarely see a performance by Christian Bale. I don't know if I've ever seen a performance by Christian Bale where I was like, I don't fucking love you in this, even if I think the source material is terrible. I'll give an example. Was not a big fan of, what was that movie called? Like American Hustle or whatever the fuck it was, with Jennifer Lawrence or whatever. David O. Russell did. But you can't deny fucking Christian Bale committed 110% in a way that was actually good, not like fucking Jared Leto overcommitment, but like actual, like serious, like I'm trying to play the role to the best of my ability. And he always brings that. So, got nothing but love for Christian Bale. I thought it was fucking hilarious the other day. I'm reading an article by him where he's like pretending that Leonardo DiCaprio is like God's gift to Earth, and he's like, every leading man that's our age owes him their career for turning down projects that they were able to star. And I'm like, you are like, we were talking about this guy, but he's like probably 10-1 better actor than Leonardo DiCaprio. And I like Leo. I'm not a Leo hater. I think he's good in the right role, but he's nowhere near as versatile and in-depth and interesting as a guy like Christian Bale. So yeah, I shout out to you, John. Christian Bale's a GOAT.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Christian Bale. And yeah, like I'm not saying Batman Begins is the worst movie ever. It's definitely like a competently made film. I just didn't love the like over-explanatory origin story to Batman. It just seems kind of dumb. Like he went and trained with these samurai dudes in Japan, or like what? Like, come on. It just seems kind of stupid.
It was very Tom Cruise Last Samurai.
It was. Yeah, it was. And it just feels like incongruous with the world of the comic book Batman. It just seems like a British intellectual's interpretation of Batman. Yeah, it's the first half of that movie sucks. The second half is better because Cillian Murphy is amazing as Scarecrow. He really does save the movie. And there's no denying that The Dark Knight is a classic. Like it is genuinely a great movie. And it's honestly a testament to that film how much better it is than Batman Begins. Like you watch that one, you're like, oh fuck, what happened? Like it's so much better in every conceivable metric than the film it's a sequel to. But we're kind of off topic. Anyway, that's probably a good choice. Christian Bale's a great choice for any character. And I do like American Hustle. I think I like it more than you, Zach, and there's no denying that Christian Bale is great in that movie. I'm not saying it's like a masterpiece or whatever, but Christian Bale is fantastic in that movie, as he is in basically every movie. So
I also fucking love him in The Fighter, which I saw somebody mentioning.
Apparently David O. Russell's new movie was like a massive piece of shit. I didn't see it because it looked kind of lame, but he has a new movie out called Amsterdam that like not only massively flopped at the box office, but got terrible reviews. It's just crazy. What a fall from grace. Like David O. Russell went from being like an Oscar favorite to now just kind of a laughing stock. Also, apparently he's like a piece of shit. And he supposedly like, I don't want to get into it, but he apparently like did some weird shit with like his niece, who's like a trans woman or something. Like she accused him of like touching her, like something really gross like that. I don't remember all the details.
Sounds like Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't Amsterdam, I remember it's about like something interesting that like I as a history buff would like maybe it was like about like a political conspiracy to like overthrow Franklin Delano Roosevelt because of his like from Big Business. Like it was like, that's actually a cool plot for a movie that I feel like you and I would be like right for, like, holy shit, this is what Big Business was trying to do during the New Deal. Like, we would have been the perfect people to talk about that. But the movie looked so dog shit, even though it had a pretty stacked cast. I mean, Robert De Niro, Anya Taylor-Joy, Margot Robbie, Christian Bale, John David Washington. Like, that's a stacked fucking cast. But
yeah, 100%. And also, I'm glad to see some love for Tim Burton's Batman films in the chat. I also the two Tim Burton Batman films are my favorite comic book movies of all time. Batman and Batman Returns. I love those movies. And I also really loved what Matt Reeves did with the new Batman with Robert Pattinson. That's probably my third favorite comic book movie behind the Tim Burton ones. I really appreciate Robert Pattinson's interpretation of Batman. I love how emo he is and like how gothic those movies are, or that movie is. So yeah, I'm glad you guys.
The Nirvana just completes that movie.
Yeah, it's such a great soundtrack. Yeah. Is that true? I didn't hear about that, but that's funny if true. Yeah, sorry guys, we're getting a little bit off topic. The next super chat. Thank you, Jerk Dadass, for the 199. 420. Let's go. Happy Sunday, boys. Thank you so much, Jerk Dadass. Did you find out? Is it true?
Yeah. So let me pull this up. Dude, what an alpha. Fucking George Clooney. George Clooney doesn't give a fuck. Let's read this article. When George Clooney yelled, "I told you, motherfucker," at the Three Kings director David O. Russell and began fighting, both George Clooney and David O. Russell came at blows with each other. American actor George Clooney, blah, blah, is one of the most, but did you know he once got into I call it the domino effect. The first domino was we needed an actor of stature who was willing to cut his price. George fit the bill. There were a number of places along the way where, but he needed to work 7 days a week between making, nobody should have to work 7 days a week, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't, he's yelling and George comes running over and goes, "If you're going to pick on somebody, pick on me." And David goes, "Why don't you just fucking remember your lines for once?" And boom, they grab each other and they're tussling. And so I pulled George away. That's what's it. But David is always only about the movie. Okay, that's interesting. So apparently he picked on another cast member and George Clooney said, "Fuck you." Based.
Damn, that's hilarious. That's actually pretty funny. Yeah, David O. Russell seems like a piece of shit, honestly. He's made a couple decent movies, but yeah, it seems kind of like a weird piece of shit.
Apparently that George Clooney movie right now is like doing numbers at the box office.
Wait, which George? Oh, the one with Julia Roberts or whatever.
Yeah, Julia already made $100 million.
I did hear about that. Yeah, it was like unexpectedly kind of a hit, which is cool. Yeah. I like George Clooney. He reminds me of like an old school actor from like the golden era of Hollywood. You know, we don't have a lot of actors these days that kind of remind you of like a Jimmy Stewart or something. But George Clooney has that like classic Hollywood vibe. So I do like George Clooney.
Yeah, that cadence and that voice, which is perfect in Fantastic Mr. Fox, even though you don't get to see him, but just that voice that he has, and also that he's leaned into being a silver fox. Just let himself go gray and like just owned it. I like respect that about the guy. Last aside about this off-topic thing we're discussing, that same movie, Julia Roberts. I found out the other day that Julia Roberts' parents, very good friends with Martin Luther King Jr. and Loretta Scott King, and they actually paid for her hospital bill when she was born because her parents couldn't afford to. So
damn, shit. That's cool. Interesting. I did not know that. But anyway, thank you so much, Jerk Dadass, for the 199. Yeah, I guess it's 445 now, but when you sent that in, it was 420. So we missed the boat, but maybe we'll smoke after this is done. Thank you so much for the super chat. Happy Sunday back at you. Always appreciate hearing from you. And thank you, Brian, for the 499. Biden has supported increased penalties for fentanyl possession and supported increased police funding. He's an authoritarian. What? Joe Biden increasing police funding? What? I think you got your facts wrong, man. That doesn't sound like Joe Biden to me.
Yeah, drug warrior in chief Joe. Yeah, fuck Joe Biden. Yeah, he's an authoritarian and he still fucking believes in the drug war. Except not for his kid, right? Not for his kid. His kid deserves fucking sympathy and empathy and nurture as he overcomes his illness of addiction. But those pores, gulag for them.
I don't know what you guys are talking about. I think Joe Biden is a friend to the incarcerated. No, obviously, Brandon. Yeah, Dark Brandon Rising. No, fuck Joe Biden. Thank you, Brian. You're 100% correct. He's absolutely an authoritarian. Yeah, fuck Joe Biden. Anyway, thank you so much, Brian. Really appreciate that. And thank you, Sean DeStefano, for the 199. Top 2 Halloween candy. Yeah, tomorrow's Halloween. Super excited about that. Top 2. Well, you guys know my I don't know if you guys do know my hot take, but I am a staunch defender of candy corn. I actually really fuck with candy corn. Yeah, look at this loser over here. I love candy corn. I don't eat it all year round, but towards Halloween time, I will not only get a fat bag of candy corn, but a fat bag of those like candy corn pumpkins. you know, like those orange pumpkins that just taste like candy corn. Oh, it's so dank. They're so good. It's kind of, it has a like salty under taste or whatever you want to say. It's so good. I love candy corn. So that would definitely be my number one. Number two, Halloween candies. I mean, I guess all candies are Halloween candies. Like, you know, you can give out any candy on Halloween and it's going to be acceptable. I don't know if anyone else would know about these, but one candy that I think they're made in Missouri, so I doubt people from other parts of the country know about them. But there's a candy called a cherry mash. Have you ever had a cherry mash? I fucking
With the marshmallow
love...
and
No. That's a Valo milk.
No, cherry mash. Is it the chocolate covered thing? It's like a white package.
Yes. Here, I'll show you a picture of them, guys. I'll show you a picture of these. These are one of my favorite candies of all time. My mom used to hand these out on Halloween because she didn't want to be a normie and just hand out like fucking Hershey's bars or whatever. This is a cherry mash. It's chocolate and it's filled with this like delicious like cherry, you know, I don't know what you would call it, cherry interior. This is how they look. They're so fucking good. I'm trying to think of like what you would like, cherry nougat or something. I don't know what you would call it, but it's like this delicious cherry shit inside. It's so fucking good. I love these things. If you guys can find cherry mashes where you live, I definitely recommend trying them. If you like cherry, I love cherry. Not everyone likes cherry, but I'm a big fan of those.
Yeah. Personally, I always just go with beer and hot dogs. No, I'm kidding. That's not Halloween candy, but I don't really eat candy. I don't have any candy that I really like either. So I guess if I was going to pick candy to eat, fuck.
I've seen you eat some candy.
I know, but I'm trying to think what fucking maybe Butterfingers would be the number one that I like to eat. I'm trying to think. Like, I don't have any like unique candies that are like Halloween candy that I like fucking die for. You know, it's like, oh, if I'm stoned and there's some like sour gummy worms or like fucking, you know, Haribo's fucking gum. I don't eat anything if I've like, you know, got a sweet tooth. But yeah, I guess that I like caramel chocolates type shit. I don't know. I feel like I've terrible answer to this question.
Like, I like chocolate and caramels. Yeah, the cherry mash process. You guys need to get some cherry mashes. I'm serious. These things are so fire. A fondant cream center. That's what it is. A mixture of sugar, corn syrup, and water heated to the right temperature. Then we whip the mixture to fluffy perfection, giving cherry mash its smooth, creamy center. Yeah, these things are fire, guys. If you can find cherry mashes, definitely recommend them. So there, I gave you an interesting answer that was not just a typical, I like Snickers bars or whatever. But I do agree with Zach that Butterfingers are pretty fire. When I was a kid, that was definitely my favorite Halloween candy. I kind of grew out of Butterfingers. I think I might have eaten too many of them because now I'm not as into them, but I used to adore Butterfingers. So yeah. Anyway, thank you so much, Sean. And also I saw a non-super chat question that I wanted to quickly answer. If I can find it again. Maybe I can't. Yeah, maybe not. All right, I'll try to find it later. Anyway, thank you so much, Sean. Really appreciate that. And if we want, we can pull up the next patron question while I try to find that other question that I really do want to answer.
It really made an impression on you.
Yeah, do you want to read this one out, Zach?
Yeah, sure. Okay, buckle up because these are some random ones. What are both of your most crazy conspiracy theories? Like, you know it to be true, but others would look at you like a flat earther. While on the topic, you guys ever heard of the Venus Project? It's definitely some hippie utopia stuff, but differently makes one wonder what is possible. Okay, now let us dive into some culture war. BS, is fat phobic overused? There are morons like Jordan Peterson. Yes, I understand that. What I don't understand is some folks on social media say if you don't date someone because they're fat, then you're fat phobic. If you're making an effort to go out of your way to shame people because of their weight, then yes. Other than that, people like what they like, and that's okay, right? Have you ever watched Unlearning Economics on YouTube? I've caught a few videos. They seem pretty well done. They have academic sense to them. Ever watch House of Cards? Thoughts if yes. Also, one last one, 3 favorite candies right now. Well, we kind of just trotted over the candy ones. I have watched House of Cards. I stopped watching before the end. I think I made it to the point where like Frank was president and then like maybe I'm not trying to give spoilers. Sorry. Like fucking 3 seasons in. As far as Unlearning Economics, I haven't heard of it, but I can check it out. Fat phobia. Look, yeah, people like what they like. They're like it's a multifaceted coin as far as like, no, if you don't want to date somebody because you're not attracted to them, I don't think that's fat phobia, right? You have to have some sort of like level of physical fucking attachments. But it's also like fucked up to pretend that like some men don't just like find, you know, larger women attractive. Like that is 100% true. And you shouldn't like make fun of dudes like that's just because, you know, it's just like, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like people have fucking different taste and shit, right? Like, I mean, I don't know. So to me, the fat phobic shit is like most or best reserved for people who are like just trying to make somebody's life worse. Because
did you hear about the Taylor Swift controversy? That's probably what they're referencing.
Yeah, I heard about that. It was like her music video where they were calling it like fat phobic, like that shit. I think that's overused, kind of like social justice warrior bullshit. What is actual fat phobia is like the fact that people can't just let Lizzo live her life. Like, you know, like if you got to constantly like talk about, yeah, she's a fat woman. It's like, okay, like, you know how many fat men just have like a fucking career in entertainment, and it's just like, oh yeah, you know, this isn't healthy. People smoke cigarettes. That's not fucking healthy either. Like so that's where I come down on all of that one. And before I pass the baton to Gavin, I don't have any conspiracy theories, just things I know to be true. So if you want to talk about one that, like, some people will still tell you that you're crazy if you like tell them that JFK was like assassinated by the United States government. So like, that's one where obviously that's what happened. Like there's no way that the Central Intelligence Agency was not involved in the death of JFK. Can't fucking convince me. Can't fucking convince me. Okay. Another one, can't fucking convince me we didn't know anything at all about 9/11 before it happened. Right. I'm just like, I'm not saying we did it, but I'm saying that there was some shit we don't know about. Okay. So those are the two that I really fucking think about. And then we can get into some more of the like fun ones, right? I don't know, some other ones that are less like fuck it, like more innocuous. But those would be my two that I'm like, I actually really genuinely believe that I'm almost positive, I would say, that there's more to the story on 9/11, like 100%. And then just straight up line in the sand facts, the CIA was involved in the death of JFK so that they could get fucking Lyndon Baines Johnson in the White House and have a much more sympathetic fucking ear to the deep state.
100%. Yeah. My favorite conspiracy theory, I don't know if you guys have ever heard me go on this tangent, but I do have a favorite conspiracy theory that I do know to be true. It's not a conspiracy theory. It is the truth of the situation. And that is that the Fruit of the Loom logo change. It supposedly never changed. All right. You guys see this one on the left with the cornucopia? The elites, the media, they want you to believe that this was never the Fruit of the Loom logo. And myself and many other people know that to be false for a variety of reasons. But I specifically remember as a child thinking the cornucopia on the Fruit of the Loom logo was the loom and that the fruits were in the loom. Obviously, I didn't even know what a cornucopia was at the time. And when you're younger and you don't know what every word means, you kind of just, you know, put words and visuals together. So, and this is an experience other people will tell you about too. They will say, when I was a kid, you know, looking at the fucking tag on my underwear or whatever, I specifically remember thinking the cornucopia was the loom, hence Fruit of the Loom. This is an experience many people have, myself included. But they want you to believe that that was never a part of the Fruit of the Loom logo, that the Fruit of the Loom logo at no point in history ever included the cornucopia. Bullshit. It did. And the reason why I know that is because there are multiple representations throughout media history going back to like the 1970s of the cornucopia being a part of the logo. For example, here's an album cover. Let me show this to you guys. Here's an album cover from, I think, the 1970s called The Flute of the Loom. This is a play, of course, on Fruit of the Loom. You guys see this album cover here? Obviously, it's a reference to the Fruit of the Loom logo. Why else would it be called Flute of the Loom? And of course, this trombone or flute, or obviously not trombone, sorry, a flute. This flute in the background is taking the place of the cornucopia. That's like a very clear and undeniable reference to what used to be the Fruit of the Loom logo, which was this cornucopia. But again, if you look it up, if you read articles or the Wikipedia page, they will tell you that at no point in the entire history of the Fruit of the Loom company did it ever include a cornucopia. They say that was never a part of the logo, which is bullshit. It literally was. And the Flute of the Loom is not the only one. If you look at, I think there's like a South Park episode from at one point where you can see one of the characters' tags on their shirt and it has a cornucopia on it. There's also a scene in the movie The Ant Bully where there's a scene where it depicts the cornucopia logo on like a tag of someone's shirt or someone's like underwear or something like that. And it has the cornucopia. Like, how and why would so many people just have a like mass hallucination of there being like a mass misremembrance of this very specific item being on a logo? even though it supposedly never was. It makes no sense, and no one can change my mind that there at one point was a cornucopia on the Fruit of the Loom logo. No one can change my mind. I know that's a fact.
Do you know my favorite part about this conspiracy theory, Gavin, is that nobody can change your mind that every single article of Fruit of the Loom clothing from 1960s to 1985 or 95, whenever this supposedly happened, was rounded up and incinerated. Because I have been going through your entire time looking at tags of Fruit of the Loom clothing from the 70s, and I've seen a bunch of shirts from the 70s and dudes wearing them, and they just have no cornucopia on the Fruit of the Loom logo. So not only was the internet scrub, but every single physical item on planet Earth was burnt to a crisp and incinerated so that we could all forget the marketing ploy of this one middling Fortune 500 company. I love it. I'm here for it. Sounds legit to me.
How else would all of these representations? What do you think? Frank West, the guy who designed the album cover for this album, they asked him and said, "Hey man, why did you put that flute in the back of the fruits?" And he said, "Well, obviously I was looking at a cornucopia logo. I was looking at a Fruit of the Loom logo as I designed this album cover. And of course I wouldn't have put that on there if it wasn't directly supposed to take the place of this cornucopia, which it clearly is the same shape of, takes the same place as." He said he was looking at the logo while he drew that. How would you explain that? Why would he put that there if he wasn't referencing something that was actually there? And I'm not saying I know why. I'm not saying they incinerated all the evidence. Maybe we just, hopped over to a different reality where this was the one difference, the multiverse theory or whatever, where there's like an infinite amount of realities. Maybe somehow we shifted into an adjacent reality that's the same in every single way, except for this one tiny difference. And some people have realized, but yeah, this is what they want you to believe, guys. This is what they want you to believe. This is the fact that there was never a cornucopia on the Fruit of the Loom logo. Even though there very clearly was. So many people remember this. Ask anyone you know. Hey, was there a cornucopia on the Fruit of the Loom logo? At least half of the time you ask people that question, they will say, yeah, of course there was. What are you talking about? Like, seriously, go ask your mom after the stream's over, or, someone that you know that was alive in like the 90s, and be like, hey, what does the Fruit of the Loom logo look like?
It's a very interesting study also in how framing a question on a survey will dramatically fucking increase your results. And oh, no. It's sort of, don't you remember blank?
I'm not saying to do that. Don't frame it like that at all. You got to ask them just straight up, hey, describe the Fruit of the Loom logo. Don't mention the cornucopia. Don't show them a picture. Don't say which one is it, this one or that one. Say, hey, what did the Fruit of the Loom logo look like or used to look like? Just go up to a random person that you know and say, hey, describe to me the Fruit of the Loom logo. I bet you at least half of the people you ask that question to will say, oh, it's a cornucopia with fruit coming out of it. I swear to God, I'm serious.
All right. Well, we've exhausted that fucking diatribe of Gavin's. So you guys really tapped into a real one. I thought I totally forgot about this. I thought Gavin was going to plow into stoned ape theory as his this is how it happened. But no, that was a better one. Good call on that one. Let's see. Do we have another Patreon?
1 sec. I wanted to respond to the rest of this comrade's question as well, because we did.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Ramon. You really got me going there. That is my favorite conspiracy theory, though. And I guarantee you, at some point, I'll be vindicated, and people will say, "Oh yeah, well, somehow the truth will get out, guys." But as far as the fat phobia thing, I mean, obviously, I'm not a fat person, so I can't really speak to that community's issues or whatever. But I will say that I do think like that if the whole point of your activism is to get like Taylor Swift to change the part in her music video where she gets on the scale and it says fat, like if that's really what you think is worth fighting for, like, come on, isn't there anything better to focus on as an issue or like for your activism than like, we got to change this one little thing in this one music video where it says the word fat? Like, come on, like that's just dumb. That's just a waste of time. Like, there are so much bigger issues, and not that fat phobia isn't an issue. It is. Like, there definitely is a societal hatred of fat people, which is completely ridiculous, given that a lot of people that are fat, they're not even fat because they're like unhealthy. Like, some people are just genetically predisposed to be fat, or they're fat because they're on certain
not drinking enough water.
Yeah. But like, some people they gain weight because they're on a medication that makes them gain weight. Like there's a lot of reasons why people gain weight. That's not just because they're sitting on their ass eating donuts and Cheez-Its all day. Like, and that's a serious issue. And no one should ever be discriminated against or judged for their body, no matter how you look. But that being said, I do think some people take it a little bit too far when they start like. I don't even like Taylor Swift. Like, I don't give a single fuck about Taylor Swift. But like to say that like that was fat phobic to put in her music video, come on. Like that's like you're terminally online if you think that's one of the biggest issues facing society.
Yeah, absolutely. And then have you seen House of Cards and Unlearning Economics?
I have seen House of Cards, at least the first couple seasons. I really enjoyed the first couple seasons of House of Cards. I didn't get to the end though. And no, I have never seen Unlearning Economics. I'll definitely have to check it out though. It sounds like a good channel. I'll definitely check that out. But yeah, definitely liked House of Cards. And then yeah, we talked about candy, and yeah, I'll make sure to check out my candy for fentanyl. It's funny how every single Halloween there's like some stupid fake scare that go, oh, there's fentanyl in the candy. Like the liberals are putting estrogen in the candy this year, something stupid like that. There's always some fucking fake like conspiracy about Halloween candy.
LOL. Yeah. Do you want to just round out the Patreon questions, or do you want to go back and forth? All right. Philosophically, shout out to you, Springtime for Comrades. Philosophically speaking, I think our consciences have started to be raised en masse. We seem to be starting to understand what all these wars really mean and what they do to destroy our world. But it's driving me crazy waiting for everyone to get up to speed. Do you think it's possible to step up the process, or is it going to be slow and maybe come too late? Maybe this is just one of those things where, like, I don't know exactly that our consciences have been raised in any meaningful way. People have way more access to information, which is very good. But I think it's tough to measure the extent that our conscience has been raised. Chris Hedges actually, speaks pretty eloquently about this when he talks about, how we're always talking about like we're making all this progress, right? But we haven't really made any moral or ethical progress, right? We still, every gain and bounty that we have here, is at the expense and the extreme poverty and the utter humiliation and just degradation of the global South. And we don't think about that at all. We don't think about the fact that I'm using a Mac that, was the byproduct of exploitation all across the globe. That's not part of the expanded conscience, and we're thinking it's more like, oh, now more people know about like some of the bad stuff we're doing. So again, I think that is mostly largely due to the fact that people can see the horrors of what we're up to now for the first time. So I would actually say that I don't think it's our consciences that have been raised in mass, but it's just been harder and harder for us to avert our eyes from what we're doing in the age of information. It's a lot harder for the government to pretend it's not doing things that it is when people can just see it with their own eyes. I guess is it possible to step up the process? I think it's a very interesting question. How do we ramp up our consciousness? How do we raise up our humanity? And I think that just comes from establishing, things that are human, like interpersonal relationships with people, things like that. I'm not sure that it's going to come from anything else. And will it be too late? Unfortunately, to say, my spidey senses say yes. But that doesn't mean you just like fucking give up, right? I'm just saying, if I'm giving you an honest answer, like, no, I don't know if we're going to get to live to see the time where all of us like are arm in arm singing Kumbaya about the human experiment. Like, I just think that, we really haven't shown that like moral growth that a lot of people think we have.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And also the problem, because I do agree, and thank you so much for the question and the support, Springtime for Comrades. I do agree that our consciousnesses have started to raise in mass, at least on some issues. The problem is it doesn't necessarily always matter what the people themselves think and how enlightened they may be, because unfortunately the people don't control the levers of power. So we can be aware of these things and we can be correct about these things, but that doesn't mean we have any goddamn influence whatsoever, which is really the problem. Because we don't live in a terribly democratic society or world. And again, even if people are woken up, so to speak, then that doesn't always affect the way things actually turn out. So it's a good question. It's an interesting question. And I agree with what you're saying. So I don't know, even if speeding up the process, how that would work. But I think Zach's right too. In the age of the internet, it's a lot easier to get information out, and it's easier to spread the truth about certain things. So that is definitely true. Sorry, I'm looking for that one super chat that I really wanted to answer. God damn it, I found that super chat and then I lost it again. Or the question. It was about King Giz.
Okay, just ask what our Oh, it's funny. You should have just told me that. The question was 3 albums. Have you thought like what were your thoughts on them?
Yeah, I want to shout out the dude who asked it. Someone asked about King Giz and their 3 albums that they put out this year. And I wanted to say that I am a huge fan of the new King Giz albums, specifically Ice, Death, Planets, Lungs, Mushrooms, and Lava. That is one of my very favorite King Gizzard records of all time. Probably my favorite since Fishing for Fishies. I like the other ones they put out too, but that one, the Ice, Death, Planets one, is easily my favorite of the 3. So sorry to... Oh, I think it was you, Squisher King. I don't know where your original question was, but this is... Oh, yeah, here we go. 3 albums this month. Yeah, I love them all, but the Ice, Death, Planets one is definitely my favorite. Specifically, the whole album's amazing. But that first song on it, Mycelium, oh, it's such a banger. I fucking love that song. It's definitely one of my all-time favorite King Giz tracks ever. So thank you so much for asking that. I always love chatting about King Giz.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Omnium Gatherum is the one I've spent most time with that's come out this year. But yeah, I mean, it's so crazy that they're able to put out such high quality music at the rate that they're... I mean, the sheer what's the term that I'm looking for? The proliferance of music and output, insane. And it's all good. It's really high level stuff. Occasionally they'll put out like more of a B-sides album and it's still really fucking good. So yeah, Mycelium's a great standout single too. I haven't like spent as much time with this batch of albums as I did with the like last batch of King Giz album. So maybe I need to do more homework. But shout out to you, Squisher King. Always like talking about Giz.
Yeah, and it's crazy because they put out all 3 in the month of October. Like, that's crazy, dude. And they're all really good too. Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of Omnium Gatherum. That one did feel mostly like a B-sides album to me. There's a couple great tracks on it, but I was kind of overwhelmed by the entire experience. But thank you anyway for the question. Have you watched Dr. Harriet Fraud's show on Democracy at Work? She covers topics on relationships and family. She would be great. No, I haven't, but that's super interesting. I'll definitely make a note of that and check that out and potentially have her on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Haven't seen that either. Basically, the only content from Democracy at Work that I'm really familiar with is the Richard Wolff, economic update. But yeah, would definitely be interested in chatting with Dr. Harriet Fraud if that's something she was interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we got one more question too from Springtime for Comrades. How can we get Chris Hedges and Jordan Peterson to debate the monarchy? They seem to be diametrically opposed on this issue. Of course, Hedges sees no value in it, but Peterson is a big fan of the wisdom of the British monarchy. This is one I would pay to see. That would be hilarious. I know Jordan Peterson debated Zizek at one point. That was pretty funny, but Chris Hedges would probably like destroy Jordan Peterson in a debate. Specifically, how do you defend the fucking monarchy, man? Like, how the hell are you out here simping for any monarchy, let alone the British monarchy in 2022? That's hilarious. That's a great question, Springtime for Comrades.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that after watching Jordan Peterson debate Zizek, that it would be really hard to get Chris Hedges to shit. Like, you're going to debate one of the world's foremost Marx scholars, and all you fucking read is the Communist Manifesto, like a fucking pamphlet, basically. Yeah, he did not come prepared, and he showed his ass, and now he's like a fucking pseudo-intellectual and not an actual academic in any meaningful sense. So I don't know if you would ever get Hedges to agree to something like that, but certainly it would be just an ass whooping. And if you do want to watch a great debate between Chris Hedges, I think Chris Hedges actually debated Peter Thiel one time. So that's a good one. If you guys want to check that out, I think that was for like Truth Dig or something like that back in the day.
Interesting. And we did get one more patron question that was submitted after we started the stream, so we didn't have time to put it into the special graphic, but we can quickly respond here to you, Rafi Baum. Thank you so much for the question. I know. This is what you bought us, guys. Yeah. Woo! Thank you so much for the support, though, on Patreon. Really do appreciate that. I'm probably sending this too late. Nope, not too late. I was curious if y'all could define the modern definition of the professional managerial class. I mean, that is the definition. The professional managerial class is the class of people that are professionals and managers. That it's quite literally in the name. So I don't really know how to define it beyond that, but it would just be people that exist in professional or managerial roles and occupations in society. Quite recently, I've heard some leftist commentators refer to assistant managers at fast food places. Yeah, that's stupid. And hell, even y'all at the Vanguard as members of the PMC. Yeah, we're hella fucking professional managerial over here. Fucking no, we're literally working class people. We have working class jobs.
We're the air conditioned left, Gavin. What are you talking about? Us and David Sirota and fucking all of the other professional managerial class people. I'm a fucking bartender.
Yeah, that's funny. That would be interesting to hear who referred us to as that.
I would think I could guess in about 10 seconds.
Well, I didn't know if it was like an actual commentator, of people in the comments, because we have so many haters. I wouldn't be surprised if some loser was like, they're PMC or whatever, even though, like I said, by definition, we are not. If anything, we're fucking poor people, like compared to I don't even like, technically I'm still on my parents' healthcare because I'm 24 right now. But if it weren't for that, I wouldn't even have fucking healthcare, guys. Like in no way am I PMC, but anyway, it's whatever. Anyway, it seems to be unnecessarily divisive when we're all out here struggling to make ends meet. I do understand that supervisors can be oppressive, but I also don't think that being a supervisor automatically makes someone an oppressor or exploiter of labor. And yeah, if you're like the shift lead at a McDonald's, you're not a fucking member of the PMC. That's ridiculous. And income, I also heard people say that about like the Starbucks workers, or like elementary school teachers or PMC. Like, no,
nurses aren't PMC.
Nurses, social workers. That stupid Jackson Hinkle tweet. Yeah, those are idiots. Those people are idiots. Income alone shouldn't dictate whether or not someone is an oppressor and exploiter. I know in my area that folks making six figures are still members of the permanent renter class because housing is so unaffordable. The only reason I'm in the process of building my first home is because my employer is a home builder and offers a huge home buying discount for all employees. Without that, owning a home in today's market is a pipe dream, and I'll still have to rent out a room and do some kind of Airbnb thing to pay off the mortgage. White collar and blue collar workers are all members of the working class. It's the owner class that should be united in our efforts to defeat. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm a social libertarian and still find some purpose in traditional market/hierarchical, but decentralized structures. Anyway, always fun to watch you guys. Hope you have a great Sunday. Solidarity always. Well, thank you so much. That's a really interesting question, and I really appreciate you asking it. Yeah, like I said, the definition would mostly be people in those like higher up echelon professional managerial roles, which again, inherently is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, for example, fucking Cornel West would be considered a member of the professional managerial class. He's a professor, or he was a professor at fucking Harvard. Like, that's definitely a PMC kind of role. But the problem I have with people using it as like a not an insult, but what's the word I'm looking for? Like a disparaging word to basically just shut down a conversation from someone they don't like, is because it's always very selective. Again, if you don't like someone, like, oh, David Sirota is a PMC, but then they wouldn't say that about Cornel West or Chris Hedges. Or Jimmy Dore, who's rich as fuck. Like, it's always selectively applied. Or Susan Sarandon. Like, we have a lot of allies on the left who are part of the professional managerial class or beyond. But it's always selectively applied only to people that you disagree with. Like, oh, I don't like this one thing this one guy said, so I'm going to weaponize the fact that they have more money than me and say that makes their points illegitimate somehow. Or like they can't be a leader of this movement because they're PMC, even though Cornel West can, even though he's also PMC. Like, what? It's just always selectively fucking applied. And I just generally think it's kind of a lazy argument. It's like, just address the substance of what someone's saying. You don't have to bring their income into it. And like, obviously I agree, like working class voices should be front and center in our movement, and every single leader of our progressive movement should not be a rich person. Obviously you need people from the working class. You need people that are poor to be making that kind of to be making those contributions and providing that perspective. But that doesn't mean that it invalidates the perspective of someone like David Sirota or Susan Sarandon or Cornel West just because they have more money than us.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think at some point it does come down to ownership. Like, sure, people who can pay their rent and never think about it, they do not have the same fucking material urgency as the working poor, right? The people who are on the fucking margins, the people who don't have a savings account, and if they miss a paycheck, then their rent is fucked, and as well as everything else on their life. Like, obviously, that's a different lived fucking experience than, fucking Chris Hedges has or Cornel West has on a day-to-day basis, right? Or most people, right? like like that have a fucking social presence, right? Like in a meaningful way. Like you've sold 1 million books, like you're just not going to fucking have that struggle anymore in your life. I don't think that necessarily means that you're like a fucking enemy of the people, right? Like I'm trying to think of Chomsky can pay his bills. I still think he's, for the most part, a comrade, right? I don't think he's like fucking, turning on a dime just because he's a PMC fucking tenured professor or whatever the fuck, so I do think that's a little overblown. Like our people are the people who make 150 grand a year are not our fucking enemies. They have a lot more in common with us than they do with the ownership class. One thing that they don't often have in common with us is the fact that like the urgency to like fucking pay your bills, they're just trapped under the same fucking boot of unable to like make purchases, right? Like, and yeah, so of course it's different. The lived experience of somebody who's making fucking $14.50 an hour and barely able to pay their rent with 3 roommates is different than the lived experience of a college professor with tenure that's making 180 racks in fucking healthcare and benefits and all that kind of shit, right? But I don't think that necessarily like has to drive a wedge between us in our politics, as long as that person with the college degree and the less urgent needs understands the role that they are to play in this kind of uphill battle, right? But what happens instead is those people often just get swindled by being like, well, like I have a little bit in common with the billionaire aristocracy. Like I like nice shit. I don't know. I think I could get used to this. So it's a complicated thing to like fucking weigh out, but for the most part, I think it just comes down to like, where are you going to stand when the lines are drawn? Are you with us or against us? And I think that's what's most important.
Absolutely, 100%. And again, it just seems like it's always selectively applied against people you disagree with instead of just addressing the substance.
Yeah, I've never heard Russell Brand get called the fucking air conditioned left.
That's a great point. And yeah, also another question, also regarding gas prices, would y'all be opposed to attacking the problem from both the demand and supply side? In other words, flood the market with oil, ideally nationalize it, because we're seeing that private oil companies are not currently drilling because there's no profit in it at this time, while also significantly decreasing demand by investing in renewable technologies such as nuclear, geothermal, wind, solar, etc. Hell, with nationalizing the energy sector, we could either go the Palin route and use the profits for UBI, or just have power available free at the point of service, since it would be funded with tax dollars. I definitely am in favor of nationalizing the energy sector. That's for sure. I don't know about flooding the market with oil. I think we should try to, wean ourselves off of fossil fuels. But I mean, I think some of the suggestions you're making are definitely in the right direction.
Yeah, like obviously in the short term, we cannot keep fucking penalizing people in the way that we are, particularly the working class, the longest commuters with high gas prices, right? Because that's just a tax for the working poor, essentially. So that's something that does have to be alleviated. So I see what you're saying with, so I don't know about flooding the market with oil, but certainly something to alleviate the fucking massive strain on the commuting workers who have no choice but to go to work and then spend a larger chunk of their wages on gas, and they're commuting farther because they can't afford real estate close by where they work. It's a compounding problem that definitely affects mostly the working poor, right? So that's definitely something that needs to be addressed. However, I'm with Gavin that I think we do as much as we can to address that while still knowing that the real ball game is renewable energy. It's getting us away from single unit transit and into public transit. And, it was funny. I was watching The West Wing last night, and I watched The West Wing, but when they were talking about how nobody would ever get on subways. It's just like an East Coast thing. Like after you get past Chicago, nobody wants fucking subways. I'm like, you stupid sacks of shit in the 90s, man. You should have built subways all across this fucking country. It would have been so much better for us down the line. But apparently they were, oh, American freedom, cars, that kind of shit. That was a real fucking argument from people in the 90s, and look at where it got us. So I would just be funding massive infrastructure for public transit that's renewable. And in the meantime, yeah, find a way to make the most afflicted Americans, maybe get a tax credit for their gasoline prices, maybe get like a fucking gas card in the mail that helps people out if you make X, Y, and Z amount of money. These are all ideas that I would float.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely a good answer. And thank you so much for the $10. Tanja H, really appreciate that. What do you think about the climate activists throwing soup at famous paintings? I don't think it is very effective. Do you agree? If so, is there a better strategy in your view? Yeah, I definitely have mixed feelings about the whole like throwing soup at paintings thing, because on one hand, most of these paintings do have glass on them. So it's not like they're actually destroying the painting. So like that's important to acknowledge. But I don't like the first time it happened, I was like, okay, that's an interesting and innovative approach to raising awareness, and it definitely got headlines and like people were talking about it. So I was like, you know what, this is maybe cool. Like it's definitely unconventional, but I can see the point of this. And then it happened like 4 more times, and now I do think it's kind of cringe because it's like, what do you just fucking throw soup at every painting and suddenly climate change is going to end? Like, you're not actually doing anything. Like, yes, it raises awareness, but like, I don't think if 10 more paintings got tomato souped, then climate change would somehow be reversed in any way. Like, I just don't really see how it's doing anything other than, I don't know. Like, it just seems like, yeah, it gets people's attention. It would also get people's attention if I, took a shit in Times Square and ran around naked yelling racial slurs. Like, that would also get people's attention. That doesn't mean it's productive, right? Like, just because you get attention doesn't mean it's necessarily inherently good. And if anything, given how reactionary a lot of people are, I think they're just going to look at that and say, well, that's stupid. And then that's gonna reflect poorly on the environmental movement as a whole. Like if you just think about some normie person who thinks that climate change is a problem, like most people agree that climate change is a problem, but most people, if they see something like that, and they see someone throwing soup at a famous work of art, they're just gonna be like, "Well, that's fucking dumb." Like that's stupid. Like I just don't really see the point of it. Again, the first time it happened, I was like, you know what, I can get behind this, and then it happened like 3 or 4 more times, and now I'm just all right, guys, like let's think of some new ways to approach this. And as far as different and more effective ways, like bring the protest right to the fucking oil companies. Like protest outside their headquarters, throw soup at their windows, smash their window. I don't know, do something cool like that. Like fucking go break into in Minecraft, don't actually do this, but like, go free some animals from a slaughterhouse or something like that. I would say that those are slightly more effective and have actual impact on these industries rather than just like throwing shit at
Wow.
at Van Gogh works or whatever.
Gavin revealing his PMC loyalty, art over people. Wow. Just blatant liberal Gavin. No, I kind of get where you're coming from. Like, I don't give a fuck about most of these paintings. I really like, I mean, if you read about the art world, like most shit in the art world is just like deemed to be fucking more miraculous than something else for one reason or another. I'm not like gonna cry over a fucking, tomato soup thrown at a fucking Monet or whatever. It's not gonna fucking ruin my day. But that being said, I think that what it is it's not the most effective, right? It's, are we gaining people that are going to sign up to do that? Like all the wrong people, right? Like, who you're going to get? You're going to get that bald guy that put some super glue on his head and then just started pouring the soup on himself. It's like, we don't need that guy. What the fuck did that guy do? That guy was just bored and lonely and he wanted to be part of the thing. So it's like, that's not really an effective messaging because again, it's not constructive at all. There's literally nothing constructive about it. And it's also typically the type of activism that gets dismissed because it's like the person that's doing it like kind of wants to be more of the like star of the show than the actual like statement that they're making. Those kinds of things they said that are ostentatious in that way typically does drive a wedge between I want to go out and I want to help fight climate change, and it's like, well, this is what you better do, motherfucker. Like, I don't know, I don't think it sends the message that we necessarily need to. I understand the message that they're trying to put out is that you have to make people uncomfortable, right? That you have to like change their like lived experience in a way that's like dramatic. But I always just wonder, it's like, so you get like a 10,000 lefties to go shut down a highway, and then now a bunch of working class people just fucking hate you because they can't get to work now, and they're gonna make less money, and their boss is gonna be pissed at them, and all these kinds of things. And like, yeah, so like the idea of shutting down a highway is based, but like, who are you actually impacting, right? Is like, and this is like the other end of that spectrum. It's just like, well, who is that really impacting, right? Like, you got to think about the outcome more so than just like the cameras. But again, I don't have any animosity towards the like fucking tomato soup people. Like some people on the left were like, this is crazy. I'm like, I don't give a fuck what they do. They can destroy some property. Like rich people destroy property all of the time that doesn't belong to them.
Yeah, but if it's literally counterproductive to a movement the goals of which I agree, then I can understand criticizing it. Because like I do think it has crossed the point where it's kind of counterproductive, and like most of your average normal people that we actually need to convince will just be turned off by it, rather than be like, oh, actually that's so base. Now I'm going to become an environmentalist. Like most people are just going to look at that and be like, that was really stupid. You know,
maybe, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, I don't care. Like, I don't know. Like setting a police station on fire. Like in Minecraft, I'm not opposed to that. When it happened in Minneapolis, I was like, oh, that's based. But like when
that's actually
yeah. Well, hold on, because to my mom and a bunch of people like her, they were like, whoa, this is crossing the line. I can't believe this. I wanted to go to these rallies, but I'm not going to go if there's violence. Right. So I'm just telling you that there are those people in every situation. So, you know, I don't know if burning down a police, I thought it was based to give a fuck, show them that, hey, we're serious about this. So, I mean, if that was the intent of the first one, hey, we're fucking serious about this. Like, I get it. And obviously it's just like the Batman, right? There's going to be a bunch of cheap imitations afterwards. Like, you know what I mean? But I don't know.
I think that's not really analogous though, because that would be like if someone went and burned down like a oil refinery or like a headquarters of a fossil fuel company, to which I would have no problem with whatsoever if that happened in Roblox.
That would burn like crazy.
Yeah. Again, as long as no like actual working people there were hurt in any way or endangered. But yeah, if that happened in Minecraft or Roblox, I would be 100% down with it.
Gavin and I are, of course, just saying all of this to sound cool and in hypotheticals.
This is all satirical. But yeah, it kind of reminds me of the whole debate about like remember when PETA would like throw paint on people that were wearing like fur coats? Like I 100% agree with the message of that protest. I think the fur I mean, you guys know I'm an animal rights advocate, and that's like something I really care about. And the fur industry is one of the most disgusting and cruel, inexcusable industries that exist. Like, and anyone that supports it, I think, is pretty like I don't know how you could support it. I really genuinely don't know how you could go out there wearing a fur coat made of like hundreds of dead animals and be like, this looks great. But that being said, I don't think that's going to change anyone's mind, right? Like it's just not. If anything, it's only going to make them more pissed off at you and only going to make those people hate you more. I just think there's more. Like go free some animals from the fucking cages or something. Like it just seems kind of.
Wow, Gavin advocating for stealing property. No, I'm kidding. I agree with you. I agree with you. I personally, the first time I saw it, I was like, LOL. Like, I don't want to feign any outrage. Like, I saw that they dumped the tomato soup and then glued them on there, and I was like, LOL. So, you know, that was my reaction.
I'm not outraged at all. I don't give a fuck either.
Yeah.
Maybe if they actually destroyed the work, I think that would be going way too far. If there wasn't glass on it, then I do think that would be inexcusable. But I'm not outraged. I'm not like fucking tone policing anyone. I'm just saying, like, is it productive? That's what I care about at the end of the day. Like, I'm not outraged about it. I'm just concerned about whether or not it's actually productive as far as like anyway, who knows?
Well, no, that I would agree with. It didn't do anything productive, but I wasn't like, oh, this is a fucking like outrage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh, do you want to answer this one?
Moving on. TYT and most liberals and leftists would have supported the Iraq and Afghan wars if Al Gore were president at the time instead of W. Yeah, I think a lot more people would have supported that war because here's the thing. I don't know. Well, it's tough to say because didn't John Kerry like turn around and he also supported the war in Iraq? So didn't all these like I don't know. Like there were a lot of Democrats that did support these wars. So I don't know. Actually, I mean, also I think back in that time, Cenk was a conservative, so he probably was supporting that shit anyway. I don't know. That's kind of counterfactual that I may have to do more homework on, but I would say it's probably a mixed bag. Obviously, some more people would fucking say that, but I don't know. What's that face for, Gavin?
Looks like we have some breaking news, guys. Lula has apparently defeated Bolsonaro in Brazil. I just looked this up to make sure it was true. Obviously, we'll have to see. Hopefully, Bolsonaro accepts the results of this election. But it does look like Luis Inácio Lula da Silva is posed to be elected the new Brazilian president, defeating incumbent Jair Bolsonaro. Woo! Speaking of the environmental movement, huge W for the environmental movement, given the ecocide being perpetrated on the Amazon rainforest at the hands of Bolsonaro. So assuming that he actually accepts the results of the election and steps down, which is an if, huge win. This is awesome. That's great news, especially given the fact that he tried to prevent people from voting by blocking off roads and stuff. So, wow. That's thank God. Great news.
Also, can we just talk about how fucking bullshit it is that Brazil already found out who the fuck basically won their election today, and it takes us like fucking weeks to get a fucking reading. And all right, like, are we really that much more fucking technologically inept than Brazil? a fucking country with a shit ton of Amazon rainforest to account for. I'm just saying. But yeah, this is based, obviously, at the beginning of this stream, we were discussing the fact that Jair Bolsonaro has made an effort to, diminish the voter turnout. It looks like that might have been foiled, or at least just inadequate based. But we don't know what the fuck else this man is thinking of doing if his plans don't work. I would say that they're not out of the woodwork 100% yet. But I mean, I'm not trying to be inflammatory. Like, I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that Lula takes power with ease and all that kind of shit. I'm just saying, from what I read, people were suspecting that might not go down like that. But I don't know if that's just like inflammatory international media or not.
Yeah, thank God though. Holy shit, thank fucking God, man. I was really worried that Lula was gonna steal this one with the blocking of the highways and stuff. So thank God. Oh my God.
You mean Bolsonaro?
Sorry, Bolsonaro. You know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's crazy. So thank you for letting us know about that, Sierra Ba. Really appreciate your super chat and for letting us know. That is breaking news. Holy shit. Thank God. Oh my God. That's great news. But yeah, we got another super chat from Alex Khan. Thank you so much for the $4.99, Alex. Advice for new podcasters. I'm thinking of starting a pod. The piece of advice that I always give to people is like literally as cheesy as it sounds, just don't give up. Like persistence is really the number one most rewarded element of being a podcaster, at least a YouTuber. So many people, they put out like 30, 40, 50, 60 videos, not gaining traction. They're not getting an audience. And they're just like, fuck it. This is a waste of time. I'm going to give up. Don't do that. If you want to succeed, you're going to have to toil away for like at least 6 months, just making content for like no views and no money. You're just going to have to accept that. And eventually, assuming you're like decently charismatic, obviously some people are just not talented enough, unfortunately, to succeed. But assuming you have an ounce of charisma and assuming you have like just the bare minimum of like intellectual capacity in order to give interesting and good opinions on things, you'll make it. You'll gain an audience. So I would just say, like, seriously, keep persisting, keep at it. Don't get discouraged by the fact that for the first like 6 months to a year, no one's gonna watch, and eventually you'll gain an audience.
Yeah, definitely. I would also add that it's really important to talk about shit and make content that you would have already been doing anyway. Like Gavin and I, we already talked about this shit all the time amongst ourselves. Gavin and I would just like pick random podcast topics sometimes and like fucking record them in his dorm room. You have to just enjoy doing it, right? And that's how you'll have the legs to do it. Like, I straight up just like doing this show with Gavin. Like, we fucking enjoyed it and had a good time back when nobody was watching. So that's really important. I would say, so outside of being passionate about what you're talking about and being honest and, always being obsessed and staying up to speed on everything and always making sure that you're as much of an authority as you can be in whatever lane you want to carve out for yourself. That's really important. But the other thing is man, I highly, highly, highly recommend, and this could just be a me thing, get a fucking co-host. I do not understand how people fucking do podcasts by themselves. I think, in fact, if you do a podcast by yourself, it's going to get boring faster. It's going to get tired. You're going to repeat yourself a lot more. It's going to be harder for you to break in because you're just going to have you there. Whereas if you have another person, you have an infinite number of fucking kind of side comments, conversational weeds that you'll get into, your own memories from your own lives that add like a personality flavor to it. Rapport, all those different things that just makes it more fun to watch. It just makes it feel more authentic, like you're actually in the room with the discussion. So that's something that I, not just for like creating podcasts, but it's also something I just kind of prefer when I'm listening to a podcast, to have it be more than one voice. Obviously, there are some people who do the solo shit really well, but that would be my other piece of advice.
Yeah, I agree with that. It makes it wait. I mean, you guys will notice if like one of us gets up to go to the bathroom, like if I'm just chatting here with Zach and then all of a sudden it's just me because Zach left for 5 minutes, like it very quickly gets not as good. Like it's a lot harder to monologue. Some people are good at it. Like there's obviously some commentators out there that are really good at just like monologuing, like Kyle Kalinske, for example. He's really good at just like, having a conversation with himself in a room alone. Not everyone's like that. I'm definitely not like that. I think Zach and I really benefit from having each other to bounce off of, and that dynamic really helps our rapport. So yeah, I think that's a good piece of advice too. But yeah, I think hopefully that's some helpful advice, Alex. Really appreciate the question, and that would be cool to collaborate at some point in the future if you end up actually starting a podcast and getting off the ground. That'd be cool. So thank you so much, Alex.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Comrade again with the more of the Godzilla questions. Which Godzilla designs are your guys' favorite? Shin, GMK, and Heisei Godzilla are mine. Legendary G would be my favorite if he had a bigger head. Interesting. I like Shin and I like Legendary, and I don't know enough to comment on the other ones because I would just say I don't like them.
Yeah. Thank you so much, comrade. Great question. Yeah, I'm actually, hot take, not a big fan of the GMK Godzilla. I know a lot of people love the GMK. That's Godzilla Mothra King Ghidorah. That's one movie that came out in like the early 2000s where the Godzilla design was actually pretty different from the previous ones of the same era. Not a big fan of that design. I just don't like his like lifeless white eyes. For whatever reason, the Godzilla in that movie just has like white eyes and they don't change at all. They're just like, it just kind of makes it look like he's like, I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of the eyes in that specific design, although the movie itself is pretty good. I do like the later Heisei designs more than the early Heisei designs. Like if you look at especially the burning Godzilla from Godzilla versus Destroya, that's probably my favorite Godzilla design from the Heisei era. But all the later Heisei movies are great. I love all the Millennium designs too. At least I really love the designs from all the Millennium movies except for GMK. And I also love the legendary ones. I love how chunky Godzilla is in the new legendary ones. He's just like such a beast. I love that shit. I love the new American legendary design for Godzilla. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of some Godzilla fans love the very early Godzilla movies like from the 60s and 70s. Never been a big fan of those, partially just because I think Godzilla looks so goofy. I like him when he does look a little bit more like, threatening and all that stuff. So yeah, that would be my answer. Love the later Heisei, love the Millennium, and love legendary designs a lot. But thank you so much, comrade. And Shin's good too. Again, Shin's not my favorite Godzilla movie. I appreciate it more than I love it, but definitely a unique interpretation.
Yeah, which is odd because I don't know a lot about the Godzilla ones, but I actually really liked Shin. I thought it was like a fucking dank movie, but anyway, shout out to.
It's definitely a dank movie. Like I said, there's no like fighting. There's no monster. It's not like Godzilla fights any other monsters. It's more like a serious Godzilla movie, which is fine. But I mean, the same way that the original Godzilla movie is probably like arguably the best one in the series, but it's not one that I really rewatch a lot just because it's like it's not as like fun to watch, Anyway, thank you so much for the $5, comrade.
Yeah, there's also just a ton of like political commentary packed into Godzilla, which I feel like, it makes it interesting. But shout out to you, comrade. And shout out to our next super chatter, MX Row. Buy some candy. Happy Halloween. Thank you. Got a lot of good Halloween kind of candy related questions today. So we got to walk you guys through the list of things that Gavin and I gobble up during Halloween. Gavin, cherry mash man over here. Me, the hot dog and beer. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, thank you so much, MX Row. Definitely looking forward to Halloween tomorrow. That's for sure. And really appreciate that. We'll definitely buy some candy corn. I'll force feed him some candy corn. And thank you, Brian, for the $1.99. We just talked a little bit about that. Thank God Lula pulled it out. Looking forward to seeing what happens next. Hopefully Bolsonaro concedes the election. We'll have to see if that happens. But if not, I imagine there'll be massive social upheaval in Brazil. People are not going to be down with that. So let's hope that they show up and protest if, in fact, he tries not to step down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm just hoping for the best. Like, Lula takes power and, does good things for the people of Brazil. It's all. But yeah, hopefully there's nothing fucking shady that goes on that keeps him from, taking power if he wins the election.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Matt Ocelot, as always, for the $5. Love seeing you in the chat. Ever heard the Area 51 call from the Art Bell show in 1997? Spooky stuff for Halloween spirit. No, I don't know what the Art Bell show is, but I will look it up and check that out because that sounds interesting to me. Do you know anything about what Matt Ocelot is talking about?
No idea, but I see a picture of Art Bell, and he looks like, he came straight out of like an 80s paperback book. He's like an American broadcaster, and in his like Wikipedia picture, let me just pull this up for everybody because this is a real vibe. This guy, this is how I want to be immortalized in my Wikipedia picture. Just an all-black turtleneck and a burning cigarette. Just like this guy's right here, like big Stephen King glasses from the 80s. He's had like 5 wives. This dude's crazy. Don't know anything about him other than that, but shout out to you, Matt Ocelot, God, for giving me that image in my life.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. I'll have to look more into that, and I'll definitely do some research and look that up on YouTube or something tomorrow on Halloween. So thank you so much, Matt Ocelot. God, always appreciate hearing from you. I think we're almost out of super chats here. We've been going for almost 3 hours.
Yeah, we got the Bruce Stevens is I think all that's left.
Yeah. Once again, thank you for that, Sir Bob. Really, thank you for letting us know. Oh, and yeah, you can answer this one, Zach.
Vikings v Chiefs for the Super Bowl. Too early. God, it is too early. Look, the Chiefs have a lot to sort out. If they play every game like they played against the 49ers, then we're going to have a way better season rounding out. It's really going to be about can we do a better job defending against the rush, running the ball, right? Can we do a better job defending that? Because they've fucking beat the hell out of our defense doing that in the first couple of games this year. Our defense has had a hard time shutting that down. We also need to establish more trust. I talk about this all the time. Need to establish more trust between our receivers and Patrick Mahomes. We started to see that right now. McCole Hardman and Travis Kelce are the two main guys that he feels comfortable hitting with any kind of regularly. Juju Smith-Schuster really needs to step it up if we're going to have good ball movement and good consistency. And also, I mean, I've been a little bit disappointed by Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'd like to see him be more a part of the ball movement on field. We've got the other kid that's running pretty well this year. What's his name? Pacheco, Isaiah Pacheco, I think. I don't fucking know. There's a decent guy that's been taking over for Edwards-Helaire a lot this year. I think his name's Pacheco. He's been doing good. So I don't know if we'll be a Super Bowl ready team. And I haven't watched a lot of the Vikings games. I think they've only lost one game, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Yeah, they're 6-1. They just they're first in the NFC North. So yeah, I mean, Vikings look like a very formidable team. Let's see who the fucking one loss that they had was from.
Who did they lose to?
Sorry.
What? I was saying I kind of tuned out what you were saying. Did you think that the Chiefs actually have a chance of getting to the Super Bowl? That's all that I care about.
Oh no, I don't think so.
No,
yeah, it looks like they lost to the Eagles.
Wrong.
I mean, we have a chance. We always have a chance. We have a good fucking football team if we get hot at the right. Like we'll make it to the playoffs. This isn't the best form I've seen the Chiefs in. Let's just put it that way.
Interesting. Yeah, hopefully they do. It's always good. It's always makes it more fun to watch when they're doing well. But yeah, thank you so much, Bruce. I don't know much about football, so I can't really give you a great answer on that, but I'm going to co-sign everything that Zach said. He was speaking the truth right there. And also Kevin says that apparently a guy called into his show saying he worked in Area 51 and started revealing its secrets, and then the show went off air out of nowhere. Interesting. I'll definitely have to check that out. That's super interesting. You guys know I love alien shit and anything to do with UFOs, so I'll definitely have to check that out. Thanks for letting me know about that. I'm surprised I hadn't heard of that, but thank you guys for letting us know, and thank you everyone for tuning in today and sending in questions. We had an awesome live stream as always.
Yeah, whoo, man, we've been grinding. We'll be back tomorrow to grind some more, but this was an awesome chat. Really appreciate it. Always love taking a little bit of time on a Sunday to chat with the Vanguard community, the hardcores, do a fun Q&A, vibe with everybody. Special shout out to our Patreon community, all of you lovely patrons, comrades, Vanguardians, super Vanguardians. You make the wheels on our van go round and round, keep the lights on in this joint. So we have nothing but immense appreciation for all of you. And whenever I'm having a bad day, I just remind myself that all of you people have been suckered into thinking that what I have to say has value. And that's a real boost to the self-esteem. So shout out to you, everybody. I'm just kidding mostly, but yeah, really appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. Really appreciate hearing from you guys all. Thank you all so much for the support on Patreon. Links in the description. So if you want to send in a big, fat, in-depth question for next month's stream, feel free to do so. Again, that's one of the perks of our Patreon community. So thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. And we will see you guys next time. We're coming back tomorrow. Actually, I'll announce it because I did tease that at the beginning of the stream. We are coming back tomorrow around the afternoon time, probably 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern, for an interview with Ryan Grimm. So we're super excited for that. Always enjoy catching up with Ryan. And since midterms are coming up, then I think we're going to have a really good conversation about some of those midterm races. Always love chatting with him about that stuff. So really excited to catch up with Ryan. Hope you guys are excited for that. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I imagine everyone that's tuned in right now is a subscriber. But either way, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hit that like button, and looking forward to seeing you guys tomorrow.
Woohoo! The Grimguard is back! Yes. Cope and seethe, you masses. No, I'm excited. We have a reasonable audience now, so this will be a fun discussion. Excited to chat with Ryan again. He's a great guy, and he's going to have a lot of good insight on the midterm elections for us to break down with you. Happy All Hallows Eve. Tomorrow is Halloween. Guess have a good night.
Yeah, see you guys later. Peace out. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.